Rebirth as a Russian tycoon. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251, An Unexpected Encounter at Home. Half an hour later, Mavey boarded the plane and prepared to leave the Ukrainian Army Base number 32, return to Russia to continue his idle life. However, what he didn't expect was that at this moment, he suddenly received a call from the beautiful Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister, Snarana, on his mobile phone. Before answering the call, Mavey deliberately looked at the time and found that it was already 12 o'clock in the morning. It was so late, and he didn't know what was going on. Since the last passion in the garage, Mavey felt that Snarana seemed to be deliberately avoiding him and never contacted him again. Even her daughter Lesia seemed to have something to do and didn't look for him again. This made someone feel a little panicked. He was afraid that he would play with fire too much and cut off the connection of the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine. Hello, Snarana. Deputy Prime Minister? To be on the safe side, Mavey deliberately added the position after the title. When he finished speaking, there was silence on the other end of the phone. It was not until half a night later that Snarana's voice, full of feminine charm, was heard. Mavey, how have you been recently? Are you busy? Snarana's voice seemed to have drunk some wine. I'm fine, not busy. How about you? Mavey asked on the phone. I'm okay too. By the way, what happened in Moscow last time was my impulse. Snarana's voice became softer as she spoke. Thinking back to that crazy night, it was really exciting. I don't know why I couldn't help it at that time and let the relationship develop to this point. This is also my fault. Mavey said frankly. He would not deliberately avoid such things. Anyway, it happened. We are all adults, and it is normal to have this need. After hearing this, Snarana was silent for a moment, then turned to Mavey and asked, are you at home? No, I'm in Ukraine. Just got on the plane. Mavey looked out the window at the military airport runway with only a few street lights. It was in sharp contrast to the bright lights in the cabin. The later it got, the more lonely people felt. Perhaps that was why Snarana suddenly called him at this time. You are in Ukraine? Snarana asked Mavey in surprise. Yes, what about you? Home alone? Mavey asked casually. Well, Lesia, she went to her friend's house and will not be back until tomorrow. Snarana told Mavey truthfully. From her tone, it seemed that some vague sense of expectation could be heard. This feeling was very subtle, with both invitation and resistance. Only the authorities could vaguely hear some of it. Then, I'll come over now, have a drink together? Chat by the way. Mavey tried to ask on the phone. If he wanted to go back to Russia without understanding the situation at this time, then I'm afraid that the feelings of the beautiful Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister for him would be broken here. After all, such a relationship is a spark created by chance. Once it cannot be maintained, it will be extinguished. If the two meet in the future, they will definitely treat each other with respect, as if they have never met before, and gradually become distant from each other. After Mavey finished speaking, the other end of the phone fell silent again. It was obvious that Snarana was struggling with her thoughts. Drinking together and chatting together are all very implicit expressions. But women sometimes fall for this. If you say it too bluntly, it will ruin the atmosphere. It's like, I want to get up and have breakfast with you. This is so literary. Snarana, after a little entanglement, agreed to Mavey's drinking and chatting together. After all, it really feels lonely to be alone at home at such a night. Even the Iron Lady of Ukraine can't help but have a weak side that needs comfort. An hour later, Mavey took a special car directly to Snarana's villa area. Through the car window, Mavey could see that in the middle of the night, among the many luxurious villas, only Deputy Prime Minister Snarana's house was lit with a dim bright yellow light. It seemed that someone had been waiting for someone to come. I'm here. Mavey called the other party. At this moment, just saying these three words meant a lot of things. Well, I'm in the living room. Similarly, Snarana on the other end of the phone didn't say much. At this moment, both of them knew what would happen next. So if they said they had no expectations or excitement in their hearts, they would be lying. Knock, knock, knock. Maweli knocked on the door 3 times gently, instead of choosing to ring the noisy doorbell. A few seconds later, the door lock turned, and the door was opened from the inside. But the person who opened the door did not stand in front of the door, but did not show up immediately behind the door. When Maweli walked into the house and closed the door, he saw Snarana standing behind the door, wearing a thin silk suspender pajamas and a khaki sweater on the outside. The lace skirt outlined her fair and charming beautiful legs. Under the dim light, there was a very fatal temptation. Why are you wearing so little? Aren't you cold? In order to break the awkwardness, Maweli asked Snarana with a smile. It's been so long, I almost fell asleep just now. Snarana pretended to look at Maweli with resentment. Then, without saying anything more, Maweli followed Snarana to the 2nd floor. When walking up the stairs, even if Maweli didn't look up, Snarana's white and beautiful legs, wrapped in a lace dress, revealed the temptation of a mature woman. This made someone feel a little excited. After arriving in the bedroom, Snarana took off the knitted coat she was wearing elegantly, revealing her sexy and hot body. The wine is here, how do you want to drink it? Snarana asked Maweli with interest. Just drink it like this. Maweli smiled and approached Snarana. Then the two of them kissed very naturally. However, it didn't last too long. Maweli and Snarana suddenly heard the sound of a key opening the door downstairs. It seemed that Snarana's daughter, Liaja, was back. The development of this plot really made the two people in the room feel a little panic. Because Maweli's leather shoes were still at the door, even if he found a place to hide, it was impossible for Liaja to not see such a big pair of shoes. The atmosphere in the room suddenly froze. At this time, the little girl Liaja also found Maweli's leather shoes. Then, she immediately noticed the clue and quietly went upstairs. She found that her mother's door was closed, but the light was still on. Liaja stood outside the door and listened for a while and found that the house was quiet. So she felt something, so she directly found the key and opened the door. The scene she saw next made her feel a little expected. Because last time in Moscow, it was also late at night like this. She saw someone and another person lingering outside the door. She had imagined this scene before, but she didn't expect it to really happen. It was a little difficult to say at the time, but these days Liaja has often thought about whether it would be very exciting if the mother and daughter shared the same husband. So, after an exciting night, Maweli woke up from the bed with 2 men hugging each other. Everything that happened last night was like a dream, and it felt a little unreal. But when she saw the sleeping beauty, the unreality disappeared immediately. Chapter 252 Negotiating Cooperation with China Mobile and China Unicom. After enjoying the exciting and wonderful night, when Maweli woke up in the morning, he couldn't help but fight with Heir and Snarana for 300 rounds. Then the 3 of them slept until the afternoon, before getting up to eat. It must be said that foreigners are unrestrained and enjoyable. They won't be too entangled about what happened. After all, life only happens once, and there will be no chance again if you miss it. Instead of being entangled in it, it is better to enjoy the present. Besides, Maweli is talented and handsome, so the two of them are not at a disadvantage. In addition, Ukraine has more men than women. Many men are obviously not good looking, but their girlfriends are changed in turns without stopping. So after comprehensive consideration, Maweli is still a good choice. At least, Heir and Snarana think this is not bad. Happy times always pass very briefly. Soon the happy life in Ukraine came to an end. As a reborn person, Maweli naturally cannot stop his steps. After all, there are many things in this world that he has not tried yet. Otherwise, he would be sorry for God giving him another chance. Ivan, send someone to contact China Mobile and China Unicom. Just say that there is cooperation and we need to talk to them. On the plane back to Russia, Maweli lazily lay on the recliner and said to the housekeeper, "At present Google smartphones have been developed to nearly 50%. It is time to make a small layout in the domestic communications industry in advance, including Russian communications companies." Maweli has asked the investment team to negotiate the issue of equity in the past 2 weeks. However, compared with the Russian communications market, China, with a population of 1.4 billion in the future, is definitely Ma Wen's top choice. We need to talk in person. Okay, master, I understand. The housekeeper Ivan immediately used a satellite phone to contact the investment team established in the Asia Pacific region. Let them send someone to contact China Mobile and China Unicom. An hour later, at the Beijing headquarters of China Mobile, a tall female secretary, wearing a bright formal dress, came to the office of Wang Liangan, the CEO of China Mobile. Boss Wang, we just received a call from an investor in Russia who wants to talk to our company about cooperation. He will be coming to Beijing in 3 days. Do you think we need to send someone to meet him? The female secretary knocked on the door of the boss's office and asked Wang Liangan respectfully, what kind of cooperation? Did they say it on the phone? And who is the investor from Russia? Wang Liangan, president of China Mobile, leaned on the leather chair and asked the female secretary. The other party didn't explain these in detail on the phone. They just said they would talk in person. As for the background of the investor, they are a multinational real estate company. The name is. The female secretary answered truthfully. Since the investment team established by Ma Wen in the Asia Pacific region is mainly responsible for the Astor luxury house in Shangyang, the shopping mall in the Huahai Road business district, and the dozens of courtyard houses purchased by Ma Wen in Beijing, not very well known in Beijing, the background is a real estate developer. It is not the famous Mavey Holding Group. Real estate developer? Then arrange for Xiaoma to receive them. Wang Liangan, president of China Mobile, said to his secretary without much thought. The Xiaoma he was talking about was the operations director of China Mobile. As for Wang Liangan himself, he was too lazy to go to the airport to greet them. After all, the other party was just a real estate company whose name he had rarely heard of. Even if it was a multinational company, it was not in the same industry as his communications company. So it was enough to let the director receive them. Okay, Mr. Wang, I got it. The female secretary said, and closed the door again. So, 3 days later, at Beijing International Airport, Ma Guoqing, the operations director of China Mobile, drove the company's small Hanqi 70-20 sedan for reception and rushed to the airport, prepared to receive Russian investors. But when Ma Guoqing drove the sedan and just arrived at the airport terminal, he was surprised to find that there were many fully armed police standing inside and outside the terminal, and it seemed that they were under martial law. Strange. There seems to be no activities in Beijing today. Why are there so many armed police? Ma Guoqing was puzzled and drove the red flag car towards the airport platform. Sitting in the co-pilot seat was the president's female secretary who acted as an interpreter. It seems that the plane will arrive in about 15 minutes. The female secretary looked in the mirror and did the final touch-up of her makeup. Whether it was a Russian foreign guest or an American guest, she had to put on a beautiful makeup. 15 minutes. That's enough time. The apron is in front. Operations Director Ma Guoqing, like the female secretary next to him, had no idea what kind of person he would meet later. In their subconscious, they only thought that the real estate developer from Russia was just like the company bosses they received on weekdays. A red flag 70-20 worth 350,000 yuan would be enough. However, before Ma Wen's plane appeared over the airport, China Mobile's operations director Ma Guoqing saw a pure black Mercedes-Benz S603 Mercedes-Benz 230s parked on the apron. The key point is not the four Mercedes-Benz cars, but the person standing in front of the Mercedes-Benz car is actually the enemy of their mobile company, the former China Unicom. The person in the crowd in front seems to be Fang Zhengde, the president of Unicom. Why is he here? Is he also going to receive Russian investors? Ma Guoqing, the director of operations, held the steering wheel in his hand. His surprised voice made the female secretary of the president sitting next to him look up and look ahead. It happened that she looked at Fang Zhengde, the president of Unicom, who was looking at her. This confirmed each other's identities. Boss Fang, that little red flag seems to be the car of the mobile company. Why did they drive this car to welcome foreign guests? After discovering the identity of the person, the male assistant next to him asked Fang Zhengde softly. Compared with China Mobile, they received more investment consultation calls. Unicom was established 5 years earlier than China Mobile. At that time, China Mobile was still a private enterprise and had not been changed to a central enterprise, so they also received a special call from the superior department, revealing that the Russian foreign guests this time were more important. I hope to have a grand reception, but not too grand to avoid a counter effect. Hence, we have this contrast now. I don't know what's wrong with them. Maybe the CEO of China Mobile is busy? Fang Zhengde, president of China Unicom, said, shaking his head slightly. Chapter 253, Ma Wen's travel scene, the shocked Unicom CEO. Fortunately, the superior department reminded him, otherwise he would definitely send a vice president and a car to the airport to receive the guests, just like China Mobile. Ma Guoqing, the operations director sitting in the small red flag car, felt that something was a bit unusual. Should we call the president? Ask him to come right now? He hesitated and asked the female secretary. But then he thought, what if he made a mistake and was too nervous, and the guests received by China Unicom were not Russian guests? Wouldn't he be scolded by the boss? Should we take a look again? If the situation is not right, call immediately. The female secretary did not even put on makeup and was concentrating on observing the movements of China Unicom. However, while she was observing like this, she saw a pure white A380 passenger plane landing on the runway of Beijing International Airport in an unusually magnificent manner. The huge fuselage was obviously much larger than the 747 passenger planes that came and went. Ma Guoqing and the president's female secretary in the car almost forgot to blink their eyes. That printed thing seems to be the Russian flag. Is this plane for the Russian foreign guest? Or for Aeroflot? But I can't find the Aeroflot logo. Due to the lack of vision, the operations director Ma Guoqing and the president's secretary didn't know what model the giant plane in front of them was. But this didn't affect the two of them, who felt the majestic momentum of the Airbus A380. Even Fang Zhengde, the president of China Unicom, and others who were standing not far away were shocked by Ma Wen's private car. In 2001, the domestic communications industry was not as developed as it would be later. Boss Fang, that Russian foreign guest is very important. I heard that this A380 is now sold for at least 170 million US dollars. That is, about 1.5 billion RMB. The male assistant said, revealing a surprised look of terrifying. When thinking about it carefully, the senior executives of China Unicom who were standing aside and listening to him couldn't help but take a breath and stare at the plane in front of them. They could feel that the plane was expensive, but they didn't expect it to be so expensive. 1.5 billion RMB. This person wants to take such an expensive plane? Too extravagant. A male senior official of China Unicom was shocked by the huge amount of money. In his impression, going out for a dinner party with a cost of 50,000 RMB is already very extravagant. But compared with Ma Wen's 1.5 billion RMB car, this extravagance is just like the sand on the beach, not worth mentioning. This is also the reason why Ma Wen spent money to buy the A380. He wants to make a first impression so that others will be shocked by his pomp before they even see him. To put it bluntly, the invisible display of wealth by the rich is just these few aspects. Sports cars, luxury houses, yachts, private jets, spending money lavishly, and not asking for discounts. To be honest, this is quite tacky, but it is so tacky that it is loved by people. How about we call Mr. Wang quickly? Ask him to come to the airport quickly? Seeing that the situation was getting more and more wrong, the secretary of the president quickly asked the director to inform the general manager. Ma Guoqing hurriedly picked up his phone and immediately called the boss. Hello, President Wang. This is Ma Guoqing. It seems that the situation is not right now. Can you come to the airport immediately? The investor from Russia is very powerful. Even the president of China Unicom. When Ma Guoqing was halfway through his words, his voice suddenly stopped. It was not because he could not continue. Instead, another giant plane flying from Russia interrupted Ma Guoqing's mobile phone signal, and it also made him stop his actions in amazement. At this moment, the An-255 super transport plane, which is much larger than the Airbus A380, landed at the capital airport carrying Ma Wen's Rolls-Royce Phantom President Class LWB bulletproof car, plus a number of Mercedes-Benz AMG armored vehicles. the huge figure, plus the super luxury car that makes people forget to breathe. Not only Ma Guoqing, but also the female secretary beside him, was shocked again. Even Fang Zhengde, the president of China Unicom, and others standing not far away could not help but sigh. This foreign businessman from Russia is really too rich. This pomp is almost catching up with the president of the United States. And that transport plane, it's too big, isn't it? It seems to be a circle bigger than the A380. What model is it? Everyone had never seen such a huge transport plane before, and today was an eye-opener. And that black luxury car, it seems I have never seen it before. I know the Mercedes-Benz AMG behind it. In the eyes of ordinary people, a senior executive of a telecommunications company with considerable status. When he came to Ma Wei, the situation was instantly reversed. When almost most people were deeply surprised by Ma Wei's travel formation, only Wang Liangan, the president of China Mobile, on the other end of the phone, could not hear what Ma Guoqing was saying because of the poor signal. What Russia? A big background. What even the CEO of China Unicom? What is this? As the door of the A380 Airbus opened, a silver gangway slowly fell from above. Then the Russian bodyguards in black suits and black sunglasses walked down quickly. They checked the surroundings for their boss. This scene was commonplace for Ma Wei, but for Fang Zhengde, president of China Unicom, and Ma Guoqing, operations director of China Mobile, it was a very rare scene. After all, among the rich people they had received, there had never been a rich man like Ma Wei who could travel with an Airbus, an An-255 transport plane, and a Rolls-Royce head-class bulletproof armored car. How much would it cost to travel with this outfit? It was just like the emperor's travels in ancient times, to the extent of wasting people's money and labor. A young Russian man in a suit walked down the plane surrounded by bodyguards. Fang Zhengde, the president of China Unicom, immediately came forward with an interpreter and said, "Hello, Mr. Ma Wei. Good afternoon, welcome to China Unicom. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Fang Zhengde, and I'm the current chairman of China Unicom." Usually, Fang Zhengde would let his subordinates do this kind of self-introduction. But because of Ma Wei's amazing show, he did not put on any airs. He smiled and warmly welcomed Ma Wei. "Hello, President Fang Zhengde. There is actually no need for such a grand reception at the airport." Ma Wei shook hands with Fang Zhengde and then said lightly, it's my duty, Mr. Ma Wei. You have come all the way from Russia, and we at China Unicom should naturally do our best to be a good host and receive you at the airport," Fang Zhengde said to Ma Wei in a talkative manner. Chapter 254. Ma Wei's big move. 2G network covers the whole country. Of course, Mr. Ma Wei. You have come all the way from Russia, so we, China Unicom, should also do our best to be a good host and receive you at the airport, Fang Zhengde said to Ma Wei in a reluctant manner. The group of subordinates behind him wondered when the chairman had such a good eloquence. He had never spoken like this before. However, just as Fang Zhengde finished speaking, Ma Guoqing, the operations director of China Mobile, who had just finished a phone call with the CEO, suddenly opened the car door with trepidation and came to Ma Wei with the CEO's female secretary to greet him. "Hello, Mr. Ma Wei from Russia. I'm so sorry. We are from China Mobile, and the CEO encountered a traffic jam on the way here, so I'm afraid he will be late for a while. I'm so sorry." Ma Guoqing also knew that his reception level was not enough, including the small red flag he drove. Compared with Ma Wei's Rolls-Royce Phantom head of state, it was a far cry. It's no exaggeration to say that even the luggage is not heavy enough, because there are also Mercedes-Benz S600 and Mercedes-Benz 230 from China Unicom. After hearing this, Ma Wei smiled and shook his head. He really didn't care about these empty reception issues. In 2001, China Mobile and China Unicom were still in the development stage, including 3G mobile network. It was developed several years later than other developed countries. It can be seen that at this time, the overall level of the communications industry is still in its infancy. 1G has just been eliminated, and 2G has not yet been popularized. An hour and a half later, Ma Wei, accompanied by Fang Zhengde, president of China Unicom, and others, came to a 5-star hotel in the center of Beijing. And Wang Liangan, president of China Mobile, who came in a hurry, also rushed to the hotel to meet Maweli at the reminder of the director and secretary. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Maweli. I just encountered a traffic jam on the road. I'm late. I'm really sorry." Fortunately, Wang Liangan didn't say that the car broke down on the road, otherwise this reason would not be right. But Maweli didn't mind such a small matter. People who do big things don't care about small details. "It's okay, President Wang Liangan, I was just about to talk about investment," Maweli said, shaking hands with Wang Liangan. Then he casually looked at the time and found that it was almost time for dinner. "How about we talk while eating?" "Okay, no problem. I'll listen to you, Mr. Maweli." Fang Zheng and Wang Liangan nodded and replied. Others may not know that Maweli just casually looked at the time. But Fang Zheng, president of China Unicom, and Wang Liangan, president of China Mobile, who were standing in front of him, saw it clearly. The diamond watch on Maweli's left wrist was the Hublot Big Bang watch that was auctioned for $4 million, or more than 38 million RMB some time ago. This watch is currently ranked first in the world's most expensive watch with a sky-high price of 38 million yuan. The number of diamonds in it is also the largest in the world today, as high as 1,282. Even without considering the craftsmanship of the watch itself, the diamonds alone are worth tens of millions of RMB. Hublot watches are the first Swiss top watch brand to combine precious metals and natural rubber as raw materials. Its birth has set off a revolution in the watch industry, both in terms of watchmaking materials and the unique aesthetic concept interpreted by the watch. As the saying goes, the poor play with cars, the rich play with watches. This is the most expensive watch in the world today. It was bought by Maweli at an auction when he was bored at home. Anyway, it is not expensive for him. Wearing it on his hand can almost be worth more than 30 Mercedes-Benz S600s and 60 Mercedes-Benz 230s. If he walks out in the future and sees those rich second generations driving sports cars and luxury cars to show off in front of him, the price of the watch Maweli wears on his left hand is enough to kill them in seconds. However, others rarely have the opportunity to show off in front of him, and it is often someone who shows off to others. "Mr. Maweli, excuse me, is the watch on your wrist the Hublot watch that you bought at the Geneva auction a few days ago?" Fang Zheng, president of China Unicom, and Wang Liangan, president of China Mobile, asked Maweli curiously while riding the elevator. The two CEOs also like famous watches, but when they asked the question, they pulled their sleeves outwards calmly, covering the watches that were originally exposed. Not for anything else, but because the Omega worn by CEO Fang Zheng and the Rolex worn by CEO Wang Liangan are too different from Maweli's Hublot Big Bang. There are two more 0s. How can this not be covered? Everyone has to cover it. Unless he doesn't know the goods and can't recognize the sky-high watch on Maweli's hand. "I guess so, CEO Fang, CEO Wang," Maweli said, and took off the diamond watch on his wrist and gave it to the two telecommunications industry bosses in front of him for a closer look. Seeing Maweli's move, Fang Zheng, president of China Unicom, and Wang Liangan, president of China Mobile, quickly took the watch with both hands. Then they praised with amazement. "TSK TSK TSK, Mr. Maweli, your Hublot watch is so exquisite. This diamond is made of more than 1,200 pieces, right? It is worth 38 million now. After 2 or 3 years, the price will definitely increase by half, at least. What kind of person? What kind of words? It all depends on the object." The two CEOs of China Mobile and China Unicom usually belong to the high level in the company. But when it comes to Maweli, the attitude is immediately different. "It's up to you to add value. Just buy it, if you like it," Maweli said in a light tone. He took the watch handed over by Wang Liangan and put it on his wrist. This natural temperament is not something that others can imitate. Seeing the first two CEOs, they couldn't help but praise again. There is no way who let Maweli have money in his pocket. And it's US dollars. The popularization and development of the communications industry requires a lot of money and technology. Only in this way can we catch up with the standards of developed countries. 2 minutes later, the three of them took the hotel elevator and came to the revolving seafood restaurant on the top floor. Based on the basic operation of the local tyrant, the entire floor of the restaurant was booked by Mawei. Seafood, drinks, whatever is high-end. Anyway, it is a piece of cake for Mawei. Even if everyone eats to their heart's content and chooses the most expensive food, it can't match the interest of one day in Mawei's bank deposit. After eating and drinking, Mawei sat in the hotel's scenic position, looking at the night view of Beijing outside the window. Then he said to Fang Zheng and Wang Liangan, "Mr. Fang, Mr. Wang, I have a question for you too. Please feel free to ask any questions, Mr. Mawei." Fang Zheng and Wang Liangan replied politely. "My question is, if the whole of China, including some remote mountain villages, is covered with 2G network, how much infrastructure and funds will it take?" Chapter 255. 50 billion investment, China Mobile and China Unicom's battle for Mawei. My question is, if the whole of China, including some remote mountain villages, is covered by 2G network, how much infrastructure and funds will it take? Mawei, sitting at the table, asked Wang Liangan, president of China Mobile, and Fang Zheng, president of China Unicom. As soon as he finished speaking, Wang Liangan and Fang Zheng, who were sitting in front of him, looked at each other. There was a hint of surprise in their eyes. The whole of China is covered by 2G network. Mr. Mawei, the amount of funds is probably huge. Wang Liangan and Fang Zheng didn't know what Mawei was going to discuss in China. Now when they heard his question, they understood it instantly. It's not that they haven't considered the 2G nationwide coverage that Mawei mentioned. But China is too big, and there are too many first and second tier cities. The 2G seamless coverage of the three major cities of Beijing, Shanghai and Guangzhou alone will cost an average of 1.3 billion yuan. According to the area of 6,340 square kilometers in Shanghai, the coverage radius of a signal tower is 500 meters. The urban area has a large population, so the coverage radius should not be too large. That means that about 3,000 2G signal towers need to be built to seamlessly cover the entire Magic City. The cost of building signal towers, equipment in the machine room, and wires and optical cables is at least 400,000 yuan. 2G coverage of a first tier city will cost 1.3 billion yuan. As of 2004, there are 4 municipalities in China. 283 prefecture level cities. 374 county level cities. 1,636 counties, autonomous counties, banners, autonomous banners, special zones, and forest areas. If you calculate these costs, you can't afford it without 50 billion yuan. Even if you have 50 billion yuan, the situation may be different from the estimate when it is built. After all, in China, no communication company dares to say so arrogantly that it will cover the whole country with 2G network. So there is no reference at all. How much is it? Give me a number. Mawei also knew that the investment amount was huge, but for the future layout of the mobile phone industry, these investments were absolutely necessary. Moreover, this is also closely related to people's livelihood and can improve people's daily lives. It can be regarded as a great thing done in Russia and China. The approximate amount, because no one in our country has tried this kind of thing. Excluding the existing signal tower construction and coverage, the amount is at least 50 billion RMB. Wang Liangan and Fang Zheng could only give Mawei an estimate. This amount of money is much larger than when Mawei invested in the gas station. At present, the available liquidity in Mawei's bank card is 4.25 billion US dollars, equivalent to 35.275 billion RMB, which is quite different from the estimated amount. Mr. Mawei, according to the mobile phone penetration rate and penetration trend in other advanced countries, the future communication industry will have huge profits. My country currently has a population of 1.1 billion. If the penetration rate is even 10%, at least 110 million people will use mobile phones in the future. The communication profits generated here are very large, Mr. Mawei. If it can be realized, then the company will be listed and even enter the Fortune 500 companies. Seeing Mawei pondering over there, Wang Liangan and Fang Zheng patiently explained to him. Since the Russian foreign guest brought up this topic, there was no reason for the two to miss the opportunity. 50 billion yuan is a huge sum for China Mobile, which was established less than 2 years ago, and China Unicom, which was established less than 6 years ago. They also know that once the national 2G signal coverage is completed, the profits generated in the future will definitely make the two companies rich. Let me make a call and ask. Mavey did not have enough liquidity in his pocket, so he needed to mobilize some funds from the two listed companies. Seeing that Mavey said he wanted to make a call, Wang Liangan, president of China Mobile, and Fang Zheng, president of China Unicom, looked at each other. From the eyes of the two, it is not difficult to find that they are a little worried about Mavey. Can he come up with this huge sum of 50 billion yuan? After all, this is dozens of times more expensive than the A380 passenger plane in the Rolls-Royce Phantom. Although Wang Liangan and Fang Zheng are competitors in the business field, but before, Mavey had clearly stated that this cooperation needs to find at least two companies. That's why the two of them could sit together calmly, instead of holding each other back, making the atmosphere tense. Boss Fang, do you think that foreign guest from Russia will invest this money? 50 billion RMB is equivalent to $6 billion US dollars. Wang Liangan, president of China Mobile, asked Fang Zheng, president of China Unicom, quietly after Mavey left his seat. I don't know, I hope he has money. We at China Unicom did think about 2G coverage nationwide, but it cost a lot of money to just build the two major cities of Shanghai and Beijing. The key 2G signal is not fully covered yet. If we estimate it according to the company's development trend, it will take at least 4 or 5 years to cover about 75%. Fang Zheng said very directly. Both companies are engaged in communications, and you can tell the truth from the falsehood of what they say. So Fang Zheng was too lazy to make false statements and talk nonsense. That would be too clever for one's own good, and appear to be too clever. Due to Fang Zheng's frankness, Wang Liangan, the CEO of China Mobile, also sighed and said, yes, it may not be possible to cover all the coverage in 4 or 5 years. By then, 3G networks may have been launched overseas. This will lag behind greatly. In addition to healthy competition at home, China Mobile and China Unicom also have to consider the industry gap between China and abroad. Since the development of mobile phone signals from 1G to 2G, reaching 3G is a foregone conclusion. It's just that we don't know when the technology can be developed and popularized. The domestic communications industry was just in its infancy in 2001. 2G technology may be easy to handle, but mature 3G technology cannot be achieved by building a few signal towers. This is also the part that the two CEOs are worried about. However, just as the two were discussing in a low voice, after finishing the call, Mavey returned to his seat with a smile. Mr. Fang, Mr. Wang, if I'm prepared to invest this 50 billion to build 2G signal base stations for you, how long will it take to guarantee nationwide coverage? As soon as Mavey finished asking, Wang Liangan and Fang Zheng, who were sitting in front of him, couldn't help but look at each other again. This time, there was a little surprise in their eyes. From what Mr. Mavey said, he seems to have decided to invest this money. 50 billion. The eyes of the two CEOs revealed surprise. Who would have thought everything through in just one phone call? Chapter 256. 50 billion market decision. Mavey's tricky operation. With such doubts, Fang Zheng, president of China Unicom, suddenly said to Mavey, Mr. Mavey, if you are willing to invest this 50 billion yuan, with the efficiency of our China Unicom, we can cover most of the 2G signals in the country within 2 years at the earliest and 3 years at the latest. Although this time, China Mobile and China Unicom are in a cooperative relationship. But at the critical moment, Fang Zheng, president of China Unicom, still has to work hard to fight for the interests of his company. Hearing that the partner actually jumped the gun, Wang Liangan, president of China Mobile, also hurriedly replied, Mr. Mavey, our China Mobile has a stable infrastructure partner. It is expected that the 2G signals in most of the country will be covered within 1 year and 11 months at the earliest and 2 years and 10 months at the latest. Sure enough, competitors are enemies. This sentence is true, no matter where it is put. Not only in China, but even the president of Apple in the United States looked down on Microsoft. In 1995, he commented that Microsoft had no taste and no creativity. Seeing the two partners suddenly start to quarrel, Mawei smiled and shook his head and said, "I think this way. I will invest the 50 billion yuan, but the coverage area, you two companies, discuss it on your own." It must be said that Mawei's investment time was very good. It happened to be when China Mobile and China Unicom had not yet developed. If it was 4 or 5 years later, I'm afraid that, even if he invested 100 billion yuan, they might not necessarily want this money. Instead, they would feel that giving up shares would be a loss. Discuss the area on your own. Wang Liangan and Fang Zheng never thought that Mawei could actually do this. Originally, they thought that after each of them got the money, they would cover the networks separately. It's just that one company may invest more, and the other company less, putting eggs in different baskets. But according to Mawei's meaning, it is obvious that China Mobile and China Unicom should first lay signal infrastructure without interfering with each other, and cover the 2G area nationwide first. The advantage of doing so is that it is more efficient. It saves half of the time compared to a single company taking 3 years. It can also avoid unnecessary competition between the two companies due to geographical duplication. After all, the current main task is to cover 2G, so that people all over the country have available signals. As for competing for customers, it will not be too late to compete after both companies have popularized the network. Anyway, both Mawei and China Unicom have invested money, and who earns more and who earns less is just like the palm and the back of the hand are all flesh, and it is impossible to cut flesh. Wang Liangan and Fang Zheng showed solemn and thoughtful expressions. It is impossible for the two companies to withdraw from this cooperation. Once one of them withdraws, Mawei's 50 billion yuan will be invested in the other party. The gap will be widened by then. It may even develop to the point where it cannot be caught up. Mr. Mawei, if we discuss this on our own, because each city has a different user base, cities with large populations and relatively high annual incomes will definitely not give it up. Once we start discussing this, I'm afraid there will be no bottom line. Wang Liangan and Fang Zheng expressed their thoughts. For long-term strategic considerations, the two companies will not interfere with each other for the time being, and there will be no problem. But in terms of regional division, both parties will definitely compete for potential regions with abundant resources and strong purchasing power. In this way, it will take more than half a year to discuss it, and it may not be possible to discuss a result. After listening, Mawei nodded, and he also felt that what the two CEOs said made sense. So Mawei thought about it seriously, and then suddenly smiled, and said to Wang Liangan and Fang Zheng, "How about this, Mr. Fang, Mr. Wang, in order to avoid unnecessary arguments, I think we should just divide the land and use dice to decide which company is better." As soon as Mawei finished speaking, Wang Liangan, the president of China Mobile, and Fang Zheng, the president of China Unicom, who were sitting in front of him, were stunned. Roll the dice. The two CEOs of the communication companies had never encountered a situation like today. In their eyes, this 50 billion huge investment project is a very serious and important matter. But in the eyes of the Russian foreign guests, it seems as simple as playing. They actually directly roll the dice to decide the regional division. Is there a problem? This method can quickly solve the internal conflicts between the two companies, right? Mawei really regarded this investment as part of entertainment. Because he is a reborn person, he has the foresight of the future for nearly 20 years. To put it bluntly, all investments in his eyes are as simple as playing. There is no need to worry about the risk at all. After all, it will definitely develop prosperously. Yes, Mr. Mawei, you are right. I personally think rolling dice is indeed very effective. Wang Liangan and Fang Zheng, who are rich, quickly echoed Mawei. But then again, rolling dice is indeed simple and crude. It takes about half an hour at most to clearly divide the coverage areas of the two companies. It is much better than arguing about it for half a year. What's more important is that even God can't roll dice. So don't underestimate this small dice. It is still very useful at critical moments. So in the end, the regional construction and distribution of 2G signal towers was customized by Wang Liangan, president of China Mobile, and Fang Zhengde, president of China Unicom, in a very interesting and intense way of rolling dice at the dining table. It can make two future powerful communication company CEOs divide the area at the dining table, like playing a game. I'm afraid only Mawei can do it. It is estimated that after a few years or decades, the two CEOs, Wang Liangan and Fang Zhengde, will never forget this scene today, because it is too vivid. Haha. 6 points. Sorry, President Wang, I won this round again. Fang Zhengde, the president of China Unicom, rolled 6 points for 2 consecutive rounds. Wang Liangan, the president of China Mobile, who was watching in front of him, frowned. Because behind the game is related to real development. So the two CEOs played very hard, and they really never rolled the dice as seriously as they did today. Regarding some details of the subsequent cooperation, Mawei does not need to come forward to negotiate in person. He only needs to arrange the general direction and hand it over to the investment team. Mawei has a vision for the future. As long as he does not touch some dangerous things, he will definitely be able to live a glorious life. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257, Spider-Man 2 is released, Zhao Xingxing's invitation. The 50 billion yuan invested in China Mobile and China Unicom was the cash he cashed out from selling some Marvel Comics stocks. Since acquiring Marvel Comics last year, Mawei bought at a share price of $3.50 and has sold some at $33.60 now. In just over a year, he made nearly 10 times the profit. This is inseparable from his correct strategy and market operation. After a while, Google and Mavey Video will also apply for listing. By then, the funds that can be raised will be even more. Mawei will definitely be able to spend a lot of money. After investing in the two major domestic telecommunications companies, Mawei's bank account only has a pitiful $83 million. Looking at the bank deposit that has dropped from 9 digits to 8 digits, Mawei really feels that the money is not enough. He originally wanted to invest in the aerospace industry and build a Russian aerospace company that can compete with Boeing and Airbus. After all, he now owns 2 major fighter research institutes in Russia. Then he will go to Ukraine and buy the Antonov design bureau that produces the An-255. Combined with the 3 major design bureaus, we designed a giant in the sky that surpasses the A380 and the Boeing 787. This should not be a problem. Unfortunately, the capital requirements are too high and the cost recovery is slow, so we can't afford it for the time being. In addition to cashing out from the stock market, Mawei's Spider-Man 2 will be released worldwide the day after tomorrow. Judging from the reservations for the premiere, it seems to be more popular than the first one. All large cinemas at home and abroad are fully booked. Even the online comments are full of expectations and people want to see it. After all, at this time in 2001, people's entertainment methods were still relatively simple. Even on TV programs, those TV dramas that were rehashed were repeatedly played without any novelty. Speaking of movies, Mawei's Spider-Man 2 also competed with Shaolin Soccer, directed and acted by Zhao Xingxing in the same period. This is the first time that special effects technology has been used in the domestic film industry to shoot and produce a movie. The box office is about $42 million. 2 days later, Spider-Man 2 invested and filmed by Mawei was released simultaneously around the world. The box office performance on the first day reached an astonishing $29 million. Then, due to the high quality of the film and the excellent plot, the box office performance on the second and third days remained at around $35 million. At this level, after the schedule is over, it should not be a problem to obtain a global box office record of $900 million, counting the cinema chains that Mawei has built in the United States, Russia and other countries. He can at least get a dividend of about $560 million from the $900 million box office. 2 days later, the president of Marvel Pictures called Mawei to announce the good news. "Hello, Chairman Mawei, I have good news for you. The global box office of Spider-Man 2 we released in the past 3 days has accumulated to $160 million US. According to this trend, it is expected to exceed $1 billion US before the end of the screening. At this time, Mawey has returned to Russia. The current profits of $100 million and $200 million are already commonplace for Mawey. Making money is as easy as drinking water. When his subordinates called and told him that he had lost $160 million, Mawey would be really scared. Well done. Mawey drank the red wine in his glass and stepped on the soft white belly of polar bear Winnie with his feet without socks. The lion Simp next to him ran over curiously and smelled Mawey's feet. Then he was irritated by the smell of his feet and his eyes widened. It seemed to say, "This is sour and refreshing, like the smell of dried salted fish." It's not that Mawey's feet smell too strong, but the sense of smell of cats is much more sensitive than that of humans. So it rushed to her nose. Chairman Mawey, the actors Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson shot the trailer for the Avengers. They have been asking us when the next one will be filmed. Which series? This question has been asked by many viewers and Marvel fans. They really want to see the heroes of the Avengers appear on the screen. Since Spider-Man 1 became a global hit, the president of Marvel Studios often received inquiries and text messages from Robert Downey Jr. They want to know when Marvel Studios will film the next Marvel hero. In short, they want to know when Iron Man, Black Widow, and Thor will appear. If they reveal it in advance, they will definitely clear the schedule in advance. After all, it is better to follow Mawey and enjoy the good life than to shoot those low-cost productions or films with little box office. Robert Downey Jr. really envied the black and red Bugman wearing a hood and spraying silk everywhere. Hearing his subordinates asking on the other end of the phone what to shoot next, Mawey thought briefly and said lightly, "It's not urgent to let them wait a little longer. After all, Iron Man, Thor, and the Avengers require too many special effects. With the current filming technology, such a good hero theme will definitely be wasted. So let's shoot the X-Men series first. Try to release it at a rate of 1 or even 2 films a year. At most, we can arrange a few insignificant cameos for the Avengers heroes. Let the fans have a little fun. Because the Marvel comics in this life do not sell Spider-Man, X-Men and other heroes at a low price. This allows Mawey to fully use his imagination and freely combine characters and plots. I believe it will be very interesting when the time comes." Okay, Chairman Mawey, I understand. By the way, we received a cooperation request from a Hong Kong film and television company 2 days ago, named Xinhu Pictures. They want to learn and exchange experiences in special effects movies. I wonder if Chairman Mawey knows this company? Regarding the cooperation and contact from domestic film and television companies, Mawey specifically asked the president of Marvel Pictures not to refuse it outright. On the one hand, he wanted to help the domestic film industry with his current status. After all, due to the monopoly of foreign technology, they will not give advanced shooting technology to Chinese film companies. Even if Chinese people spend money, they can only find a second-tier production team at most. This is one of the reasons for the 5-cent special effects. As for the second aspect, in Mawey's previous life, he grew up watching the movies and TV series of Hong Kong stars and mainland stars. If he had the opportunity to contact them, would it bring a different experience to his life? Xinhu Pictures? I know this company, let's arrange it. Mawey thought about it and said on the phone. Chapter 258. Zhao Xingxing and others were frightened by the Russian tycoon. Starlight Pictures is the film company of comedy king Zhao Xingxing. The reason for the request for learning and exchange may be that the box office performance of Mawey's Spider-Man 2 in almost a day and a half is more than that of the entire schedule of others. Okay, Chairman Mawey. After reporting the situation, the president of Marvel Pictures immediately sent someone to contact Starlight Company. And according to Mawey's instructions, he made an appointment with the other party to go to Russia next Wednesday to visit the shooting of Marvel Pictures' new film. The representative of Starlight Company, who originally did not have much hope, called the boss excitedly. After receiving the reply email, "Mr. Zhao, Marvel Pictures has sent a reply. They asked us to go to Russia next Wednesday to visit their new film shooting." The Mr. Zhao mentioned by the representative is naturally the boss of Starlight Company, Zhao Xingxing. Born in 1962, He is only 39 years old this year, and there is still a long way to go in the entertainment industry waiting for him. Really? That's great, Zhao Xingxing said with a smile. It is very lucky to get the consent of Marvel Pictures, a professional special effects production company. After all, they had approached the 8 major Hollywood film studios before, but they relied on their status in the industry and either ignored Xinghu or put forward very harsh conditions. Their attitude was almost that they didn't want to talk. A week later, at Hong Kong International Airport, Zhao Xingxing and his filming team went to Russia. They were preparing to meet with Ma Wei, chairman of Marvel Studios, when everyone boarded an Aeroflot plane and prepared to go to Moscow. Everyone was suddenly surprised to find that they were the only ones on the entire plane. Whether it was economy class, business class, or even first class, no other passengers could be seen. Which flight is this? Zhao Xingxing asked the subordinate in charge with confusion. The male subordinate also said with a confused look on his face, I don't know, Mr. Zhao, this flight was arranged by Marvel Studios. Did they book the entire plane? Just as the male subordinate was guessing this, 2 Russian stewardesses with sweet smiles explained to everyone, hello, this is the flight that our Mr. Ma Wei has booked to entertain you. Later at Moscow Airport, Mr. Ma Wei has also prepared a pickup vehicle. As soon as the stewardess finished speaking, the employees of Xinghu Company in front of them were slightly surprised. The entire plane has been booked. Mr. Ma Wei's style is really amazing, a male employee said in amazement. I haven't sat in the first class cabin yet. Does that mean I can sit anywhere? A female employee asked the Russian stewardess happily in English. The tickets they originally received were for economy class seats. Now they are suddenly told that the entire plane is this. You can imagine how surprised they are. Yes, miss. The Russian stewardess smiled and nodded in reply. It was also the first time for her to encounter such a rich man who chartered a plane and turned a civilian plane into a private car. You can sit in first class and business class. So here comes the question. How should the seats be allocated? The senior executives of Xinghu Company sat in business class, and ordinary employees sat in economy class. And the first class was also for their boss Zhao Xingxing. After a seat adjustment, Zhao Xingxing and the senior executives of Xinghu Company sat in first class. The rest of the ordinary employees were upgraded to business class. However, the service level of the 2 cabins was based on the highest standard. After all, this was the plane chartered by Ma Wei, and Russian airlines had to give him a face. A few hours later, the plane they were on finally landed at Moscow Airport. At this time, through the cabin window, a pure black Hanki luxury car, plus a number of K-Bay Warshield armored vehicles, attracted the attention of Zhao Xingxing and others. Boss Zhao, that car seems to be a Hanki HQE bulletproof car. It's surrounded by K-Bay battle shields. It is said that there are only 5 Hanki HQE bulletproof cars in China. Foreigners can't buy them, no matter how rich they are. How could they appear in Russia? A male subordinate who is very knowledgeable about cars asked hesitantly while looking out the window. The Hanki HQE bulletproof car is equipped with a 6.0 LV12 all-aluminum engine independently developed by Ford. It has strong power and stable output. The positioning of this model is higher than the BMW 7 Series and Mercedes-Benz S-Class, and it can be compared with the Rolls-Royce Phantom and Maybach 62. It can be said to be a head of state car. The car is 6.4 meters long and weighs 4.5 tons, which is about 1.8 tons heavier than the Rolls-Royce Phantom. The armor plate is very thick, and the car door is the same as the cabin door of the Boeing 747. In the event of a gas attack, the interior of the car can be completely sealed and provide its own oxygen circulation system. It can completely ensure safety. Zhao Xingxing looked at the Hanki HQE bulletproof car outside the window of the plane, wondering what he was thinking. However, from the series of movies he shot in his previous life, it can be seen that Zhao Xingxing has a deep love for Hanki luxury cars. He often uses this car in the film. But compared with the Hanki luxury cars he can get, the one parked at the airport is obviously very noble. It is extremely difficult for ordinary rich people to buy or rent it. After all, this is the symbol of the top luxury car in the country. Just now, the Russian flight attendant said that Mr. Ma Wei arranged a pickup vehicle at the airport. Could it be this Hanki HQE? A male executive suddenly remembered something and asked everyone. However, at this moment, a team of soldiers in Russian army uniforms, fully armed, with heavy guns in their hands, appeared around the Hanki convoy. Judging from the rank of the leading general, it seems to be a colonel in the Russian army. This scene made everyone on the plane stunned again. I wondered what was going on, and why the Russian army was here. Is this the car sent by Mr. Maweli to pick them up? When the employees of Starshine Company got off the plane with confusion, they saw the Russian army colonel they had just met, suddenly came forward with a serious expression and stopped everyone. "Excuse me, which one of you is Mr. Zhao Xingxing?" The army colonel asked everyone in English with a Russian accent. Being suddenly stopped by the Russian military made Zhao Xingxing, who had always been law-abiding, and the senior executives of Starshine Company not know what happened. "I am. May I ask what's the matter?" Zhao Xingxing asked. He looked at the Russian soldier, the black assault rifle in his arms, which was completely different from the props used in the movie. That was a real mechanized killing weapon. As long as the safety bolt was opened and it was swept at people, everyone would be greeted by a pool of blood. "Oh, I was sent by Mr. Maweli to greet you. Mr. Zhao Xingxing, please follow me in the car." Chapter 259, American M101 tank, Maweli meets Wolf Uncle Zhao Xingxing. The Russian army colonel said sternly. Then he pointed to the Hanki HQE bulletproof car behind him, indicating Zhao Xingxing to sit in that car alone. Hearing that the Russian soldiers who were waiting in full battle array were sent by Mr. Maweli to greet everyone, Zhao Xingxing, who was standing in front of him, and the employees of Xinghu Company, showed an expression of astonishment that was even more obvious than before. What? These Russian soldiers were sent by Mr. Maweli? What kind of person is he? He can actually shout at the Russian military, a male executive of Xinghu Company said in the crowd in amazement. No wonder the Hanki HQE bulletproof car can appear here. It seems that the chairman of Marvel Company has a great background. A Russian can actually buy a limited edition of 5 Hanki HQE. The male employee, who is quite knowledgeable about cars, said with a hint of realization. In the eyes of everyone, they thought that the chairman of Marvel Pictures was just a big shot who invested in filming movies. The news was relatively closed in 2001. But they never expected that he had such a deep background in Russia. Even the military had to give some face and sent people to greet them. The key was not to greet Maweli himself, but his guests from Hong Kong. This was completely different. That Mr. Maweli sent? Zhao Xingxing looked at the red flag luxury car and Russian soldiers in front of him in a daze. Although he had not met the legendary Mr. Maweli, just from the strength he showed, Zhao Xingxing had to pay more attention to this business visit. Even from a certain perspective, this was no longer a business visit, but a higher level negotiation visit with honor. With Maweli's high level reception, the first thing the senior officials of Xinghu Company did was not to get in the car. Instead, they quickly asked their subordinates to take out their cameras and take photos with the boss in front of the motorcade. As for the background of the photo, it was Moscow International Airport. This photo was later widely reported by reporters in the media. It also became a good story and was circulated on the internet. The general content is that Stephen Chow was received in Moscow by a certain Russian dignitary. He sent out only 5 red flag HQE bulletproof cars in the country, plus a K-Bay war shield armored car. The Linux was quite luxurious. It really brought honor to the Chinese people. It is said that the Russian dignitary is the chairman of Mavey Group, Russia's most powerful arms dealer and oil tycoon. This report was all later. However, the influence and sensation it generated were not small. Especially in the Hong Kong area, many celebrity friends called Stephen Chow after seeing the report and wanted to know what happened. The red flag convoy, escorted by the Russian army, set off from the airport in a mighty manner and headed to the filming location, arranged by Maweli. There, Maweli will start shooting trailers for the 3 movies X-Men 1, X-Men 2, and X-Men: The Last Stand. As for the shooting method, it will definitely not be the traditional shooting method known to Stephen Chow and the employees of Starshine. It is a Russian style, sturdy art. I believe that when everyone sees it, they will be so surprised that their eyes will fall out. In addition to inviting Zhao Xingxing and others to the shooting site, Maweli also invited the star of X-Men, Hugh Jackman, also known as Uncle Wolf by netizens, come to the shooting site to participate in the trailer of X-Men. At this time, Uncle Wolf had just debuted and had only appeared in a TV series and an American musical. He had never been involved in movies. So when Mavey offered a sky-high contract to sign him as an artist of Marvel Pictures and to play the role of Wolverine, Uncle Wolf felt very incredible. He was so excited that he couldn't sleep for several days. An hour later, when Zhao Xingxing and his company employees took a luxury car to the shooting site, arranged by Mavey, I saw that on the huge concrete platform, 4 or 5 American M101 main battle tanks had already been parked. Speaking of this M101 main battle tank, it can rank in the top 5 in the world tank rankings, especially in the performance in the Gulf War. To be honest, it completely surpassed Russia's T-72 main battle tank. This is why the Vietnamese army chose to buy the Russian army's earlier model T-55 tank instead of the T-72. Seeing these tanks on the square, Zhao Xingxing and his company employees were all a little stunned. Everyone walked out of the car with a confused look on their faces and had no idea what Marvel's chairman Mavey was up to. Mr. Zhao, Mr. Mavey, why do you want to get so many tanks on the set? They look like they are real guys, right? A male executive of Xinghu Company asked Zhao Xingxing hesitantly. The tank battles in the movies were all made with simulation models. And now the 5 M101 main battle tanks parked in front of everyone are obviously real tanks that can go to the battlefield. This makes people a little confused. However, when the male executive asked this question, the car responsible for picking up Uncle Wolf also arrived at the square. Then, a man with a sturdy figure, a strange hairstyle, and 3 silver steel forks on his hands, walked out of the car. Seeing such a weird scene, everyone in Xinghu Company couldn't help but take a step back. Keep a distance from the fierce-looking wolf uncle. Almost at this moment, a pure black Rolls-Royce Phantom head-level bulletproof car drove in from the gate. Then a pair of Russian bodyguards hurriedly stepped forward to open the car door. Then a Russian young man in a black t-shirt walked out of the car very stylishly. Looking at his calm appearance, it is probably the chairman of Marvel Pictures, Mr. Mavey. Boss Mavey. The bodyguards greeted Mavey respectfully. Yeah. Mavey nodded casually, and then he saw the 2 familiar faces in his previous life, the comedy king Zhao Xingxing, and the wolf uncle who played Wolverine. The stars on the screen met in reality, which made Mavey feel an indescribable sense of familiarity. Especially since he grew up watching Stephen Chow's movies, Mavey suddenly felt as if he was in another world. Hello, Chairman Mavey. We are from Xinghu Film Company in Hong Kong. This is our Stephen Chow, Mr. Zhao. A male executive came forward and introduced in English. People who are familiar with Stephen Chow know that he is relatively introverted and keeps a certain distance from people he meets for the first time. On the contrary, Uncle Wolf on the side was completely open. He just smiled and walked forward to shake hands with Mavey. But the steel fork stuck to the joints of his hands obviously did not allow him to do so. Because once the handshake is done, the steel claws will easily pierce the person in front of him. Chapter 260, We, the Fighting Nation, all shoot movies this way. Halfway through the journey, Uncle Wolf suddenly smiled awkwardly at Mavey and then said to him, Chairman Mavey, good afternoon. I'm Hugh Jackman, nice to meet you. Mavey's status and position in this life is very different from that in the previous life. So he can smile calmly and chat with Uncle Wolf and Zhao Xingxing. Unlike ordinary people, when they see movie stars, they will excitedly come forward to take photos and ask for autographs. Good afternoon, Mr. Zhao Xingxing, Mr. Hugh Jackman, welcome to Russia. This is the filming site of the promotional film of X-Men. The filming will start soon. After Mavey finished speaking, the crew of Marvel Pictures entered the set with relevant equipment. At the same time, Mavey's Russian bodyguard also entered the set wearing high-temperature fireproof clothing, carrying a flamethrower and a flame grenade launcher. That scene would be invincible without a set of steel battlesuits. Seeing Zhao Xingxing and his company employees, even Uncle Wolf who played Wolverine, were obviously stunned again. Flamethrower? What's this for? Are they going to burn the American M101 main battle tanks? A male executive of Xinghu Company asked in surprise in the crowd. From the expression on his face, it can be clearly seen that he was asking, Marvel's special effects blockbusters are all shot with real things like this? As soon as he finished asking, Zhao Xingxing, Uncle Wolf and others standing around him all showed a dull expression, as if they had never seen such a thing before. The flamethrower carried by the Russian bodyguard uses a 1-tube 4-tube launcher, loaded with 88mm incendiary rockets, with 0.89 kilograms of TPA, thickened treacle aluminum, as the charge, and an effective range of 220 meters. 4 salvos can cover a burning area of 500 square meters. It can instantly shoot out a high temperature flame of 1650 degrees, just enough to melt steel. The melting point of ordinary steel is around 1500 degrees. As for the Russian-made flame grenade launcher, its power is even more powerful, equivalent to the M14 incendiary grenade. Through the improved thermite, the grenade can burn at a temperature of more than 2300 degrees. It can burn through homogeneous steel plates several centimeters thick. It can even burn underwater, and it is no problem to use it against the German Tiger King tank. Okay, everyone please retreat to a safe distance with me. The next filming may be dangerous. Please don't run around. By the way, bring your sunglasses for watching movies, Maweli said, motioning everyone to retreat outside the safety line. There are sunglasses he prepared for everyone over there. The reason why flamethrowers are used is because there are mutant humans who can control flames and X-Men. Really? Burning tanks with fire will definitely become a highlight of the trailer and attract audiences. After hearing Maweli's words, everyone seemed to have lost their souls, subconsciously followed him, and quickly left the scene. This is not a certain degree of danger. It is clearly extremely dangerous. Quite dangerous. Are all Russians so tough? The name Fighting Nation is not for nothing. When everyone retreated to a safe area, the promotional video of X-Men officially started filming. Maweli, wearing sunglasses, saw the bodyguard in a silver high-temperature fireproof suit open the manhole cover of the flamethrower on his shoulder. Then he waited for his order and immediately started to spray and burn the tank. At this time, Maweli took the walkie-talkie handed over by the bodyguard and then gave instructions to the scene. No problem, let's start. As soon as he finished speaking, the bodyguard in the fireproof suit standing at the other end made an OK gesture in Maweli's direction. Then everyone saw a huge red flame spurting out of the jet. Instantly attacked the M101 main battle tank in front of them. The blazing and terrifying scene was like a western-fired dragon spraying flames. The surrounding air was burned and distorted. The 1600-degree high-temperature flame burned the steel of the M101 barrel red. After a while, the burning point in contact with the flame gradually melted. The whole process was like a softened rubber tube, and everyone subconsciously thought that what was burned was not steel, but something else. Zhao Xingxing, Uncle Wolf and others were wearing sunglasses. But from their facial expressions and slightly open mouths, they were obviously frightened by Maweli's special shooting. After a whole round of flame spraying, the originally straight and majestic steel barrel of the M101 main battle tank was completely burned into a soft and bent one, and it could no longer stand up straight. This scene made people want to laugh but couldn't. On the one hand, everyone was shocked by the powerful power of the flamethrower. On the other hand, they were so amused by the soft brazed steel cannon that they couldn't bear to look directly at it. Even some men present suddenly thought that if their penis was shot by the flamethrower, I'm afraid it wouldn't even be a grilled sausage, but would be directly cremated into ash. There would be no more. Thinking of this, many men present felt terrified. Then the softened steel cannon that was burned red slowly turned from red to black and became solid again. The air was filled with a strange smell of burning, which no one had ever smelled before. How is the video recording? At this time, Maweli picked up the intercom and asked the explosion-proof photography team. Perfect, boss. 2 seconds later, the reply came from the other side. Okay, continue the next round of shooting and prepare the flame grenade launcher. Maweli gave orders on the intercom. Zhao Xingxing, Uncle Wolf, and the employees of Xinghu Company who were standing by were really open to the door of a new world. This M101 main battle tank, the price is at least $2 million per unit. Converted to Hong Kong dollars, it is 16 million. This promotional video has been spent. How much did it cost? The employees of Xinghu Company were really amazed at Ma Wen's money-making shooting methods. 5 main battle tanks cost nearly $10 million US. This is almost as much as the Shaolin soccer we are planning to shoot, right? A male executive of the company suddenly remembered and whispered to everyone. The Shaolin soccer invested and filmed by their Xinghu Company, including the actors' salaries, only cost a total of $10 million US. It was not released in mainland China at the beginning, so the box office performance was not ideal, and they didn't make much money. The price of the tanks in Ma Wen's movie trailer is the same as the cost of shooting a movie. This is really a comparison, which is so infuriating, and there is no way to live. In fact, what everyone doesn't know is that these 5 M101 main battle tanks were purchased at a low price from the Americans by Ma Wen through his connections. It didn't cost him much. He used them for the shooting scene, mainly to understand what the scene would be like after the tank was hit by thermite flames and grenade launchers. Anyway, a good movie trailer also needs them. Chapter 261, the X-Men series promotional video is a hit. The flame grenade launcher, you can start. Following Ma Wen's order, the Russian bodyguard standing in the distance fired 4 super high temperature flame grenades with improved thermite at the M401 main battle tank at a certain distance. There were several bang sounds. The flame grenade flew out of the grenade launcher in an instant, and then hit the front of the main battle tank. The explosion completely triggered the thermite in the flame grenade, and then 4 hot flames like a comet hitting the earth appeared in front of everyone with a strong and dazzling white light. These 4 hot flames are 700 degrees higher than the 1650 degree flamethrower just now. They burned 4 large holes directly on the tank armor. That scene was definitely the first time everyone had seen it. So the expressions on many people's faces were like being choked while eating, and they were stunned and couldn't react. Ma Wen, wearing sunglasses, looked at the gorgeous fireworks in the distance. This special effect is really amazing. With the current technology of Hollywood film companies, it is estimated that, even if you have seen the real scene, it is difficult to imitate it. After all, one is real and the other is fake, and many clues can be seen from the details. After burning the first main battle tank, Ma Wen's Russian subordinates then hurriedly prepared to shoot the next shot. That is to drive a super crane, and then lift a tank with a special steel wire rope. Then smash it into another one. This shot is a superpower of the mind controller, Kinnu. The scene of the main battle tank weighing more than 40 tons falling from a height of 10 meters is absolutely not seen at ordinary times. The earth shook, the gravel flew, the dust filled the air, and the originally intact concrete ground was smashed into a large pit with many cracks. The main battle tank that was smashed was deeply sunken in the cement, and its head was smashed into it. Even the steel cannon was smashed and bent. In the blink of an eye, 3 M101 tanks were scrapped, which is $6 million US. Zhao Xingxing, Uncle Wolf and others standing far away side. I have seen local tycoons squandering their money, but I have never seen local tycoons squandering money like this. The key is that they squandered money in a very professional way. The production of this promotional video is not only full of gimmicks and eye-catching, and when it is released, I believe that it will have a significant increase effect on the stock price of Marvel Pictures, Marvel Comics, and the sales of Marvel peripheral products. So the money squandered can be earned back in minutes. It is equivalent to playing and making money back. Ordinary people can't learn it at all. Mr. Zhao, how can we learn the shooting method of this movie special effects? It's too simple and crude. A female employee of Xinghu Company said to Zhao Xingxing, after finding the key point of the problem. The Russian local tycoons play with real shocking scenes. The money they spend is much more expensive than making a movie. After all, Xinghu Company makes commercial movies just for the box office results. There is no driving effect of stock prices and peripheral products. There is no foreshadowing and development of the pan-entertainment concept of the Marvel Universe series. After listening to the female employee's words, Zhao Xingxing didn't know how to answer this question. He could only stay aside quietly and follow the host's wishes. 3 hours later, the trailer for the X-Men series was officially completed. 5 M101 main battle tanks finally ended their mission perfectly under the bombing of the Russian Air Force. The initiator, Ma Wen, took Zhao Xingxing and his production team to the editing room behind the scenes. Visit the post-rendering and post-polishing process of the film. Mr. Zhao Xingxing, This is our Marvel Pictures post-production special effects team. They will introduce and answer questions about the post-production of the film later. What should be appreciated has been appreciated. Maweli will naturally not let the guests go in vain and teach nothing. After all, Zhao Xingxing can be regarded as the first director in China to try movie special effects. In order to promote the development of the country's film industry and give the audience a better viewing experience, Maweli feels that he still has to contribute his part, just as a good person and a good deed. The place where Maweli brought everyone to not only had the most advanced Hollywood photography equipment, but also many special effects production props, arrangements, and advanced terminal equipment. Zhao Xingxing and his Starshine employees were simply overwhelmed by what they saw. These instruments were much more impressive than the American film company they had cooperated with at the beginning. If it were Maweli's production team to shoot Shaolin soccer, I'm afraid the special effects scene would definitely have the visual sense of a super blockbuster. It would definitely add a lot of color to the movie. Mr. Maweli, thank you very much for your hospitality. Zhao Xingxing hurriedly thanked Maweli. He has dreamed of becoming an actor and director since he was a child, and he can be said to have dedicated his whole life to the film industry. The key is that Zhao Xingxing is kind and low-key, with almost no scandals, and rarely argues with others. He is introverted and is easily misunderstood and causes misunderstandings. Just like when Zhao Xingxing was a child, he deliberately threw the meat cooked by his mother on the dining table during dinner and behaved very disobediently. At the beginning, he was always beaten by his mother because of this. Decades later, the two of them appeared on a talk show, and Zhao Xingxing's mother said that he was really naughty because of this past. However, Zhao Xingxing explained that when he was young, his family was very poor, and it took a long time to have a meal of meat, and his mother was reluctant to eat it every time. So he deliberately threw the meat on the table and pretended that he didn't like it. After listening to Zhao Xingxing's explanation, his mother hugged him and cried bitterly. This misunderstanding between mother and son has been hidden for decades, which shows how introverted Zhao Xingxing is. You're welcome, Mr. Zhao Xingxing. If you have any problems in the future, don't be afraid of trouble, just come to me. I still owe you a movie ticket. Maweli replied with a smile. Then he asked the Marvel team to entertain his guests from Hong Kong. He stopped bothering them and returned to his Moscow mansion. Wait until dinner and then have a drink and talk happily with Zhao Xingxing, Uncle Wolf and others. 2 weeks later, the promotional video of the X-Men series was also freshly baked under the rush of the production team. The news that Marvel Studios is going to shoot X-Men 1, 2, and 3 was released as early as when the trailer was shot. After 2 weeks of fermentation, both Marvel's official website and Mavey's broadcaster account receive enthusiastic messages from netizens and fans every day. Mavey, when will the filming of X-Men be completed? Who will play Wolverine and Sona? Can you reveal it? Chapter 262. Warcraft 3 is released. Russia applies for the Olympics. Mavey, when will the next Marvel movie be released? I'm waiting online. There haven't been any good movies recently, so I can only watch Spider-Man 1 and 2 again. Like the above two messages, they were directly buried in Maweli's plus 99.99 background information, and there was no time to read them. Like ordinary internet celebrity accounts and celebrity interaction accounts, at least they will be handed over to special people to manage in order to retain fans to the greatest extent. But Maweli doesn't need such operations at all. Because whether it is a star or an internet celebrity, in front of a rich man like him, to put it bluntly, they are just actors. He is now posting videos online, just to do things from beginning to end, and to give an explanation to the fans, who have supported him for almost 2 years. Otherwise, many people will be sad at that time. After all, Maweli's current number of fans is nearly 500,000. And his alternative videos have been loved by a large number of rich second-generation Americans and Russians. Many people follow his footsteps and imitate him blindly, but they have never been able to surpass him. Chairman Maweli, the online promotional video of X-Men has been sent to your email. Please take a look. The Marvel production team called Maweli and reported the matter. Okay, thank you for your hard work. At this time, Maweli was at home, living a salted fish life. so the fresh release of the promotional video finally gave him something to do. "It's not hard, Chairman Mawey. This is what we should do." The solemn words of his subordinates came from the other end of the phone. Now almost all the people in the industry know that working in Mavey Group and following Mawey will definitely make a lot of money. And by the end of 2001, the Mavey Group's annual meeting, which the employees have been looking forward to day and night, will be held again. The winners of the last annual meeting were so happy that they made people around them envious. Even if it was the 5th prize, it would make people jealous. After talking to his subordinates on the phone, Mawey turned on the computer and checked his email. Then he logged into the Mavey video account and uploaded the hot trailer of X-Men to his homepage. At the same time, the 500,000 fans under his account also received relevant messages. "Hello. The Mavey host you follow has recently uploaded a video. Click to watch it now." In just 2 minutes, the number of clicks on the X-Men trailer uploaded by Mawey exceeded 40,000. Adding the real-time traffic of the Mavey video website homepage, an average of 180,000 people per day, the number of views exceeded 100,000 in just 5 minutes. Such popularity directly killed other internet celebrities, even some popular superstars. The key is that this is a level that Mawey has achieved without special operations. It can simply make other internet celebrities angry to death. Wow. Finally waited for you. Mavey host, I'm glad I didn't give up. A fan who has been a fan of Mawey for almost 2 years left a passionate message. "Mr. Host, you finally showed up. Wow. X-Men promotional trailer. Is it finally coming? So excited." This is a new fan who just joined the pit this year. He waits for Mawey to update videos every day, and the person who waits is Haggard. Damn, I clicked in from the homepage of the website. What video did this host upload? In less than 6 minutes, more than 100,000 people have watched it? For netizens who don't know Mawey, the terrifying number of views of Mavey's video is absolutely shocking. Looking at the enthusiastic comments from fans, Mawey estimated that he would launch the cross-era concept of global live broadcast interaction after computers and the internet became more popular for a while. Barrage, rewards, anchors, rich list. I believe that by then, there will be a bloody storm on the internet. It will also bring a different change to his salty fish life. A week later, the trailer of Marvel Studios' X-Men swept the entire American network as Mawey expected. And it spread all over the world at an astonishing speed. The actor of Wolverine, Uncle Wolf, also showed his face in the trailer. It received countless praises from fans, who praised the character of Wolverine, which was very consistent with the image in the comics. Such praises have caused the stock price of Marvel Studios to soar all the way. All fans and moviegoers are looking forward to the release of X-Men. This also makes Mawey's Marvel Studios successfully leap into the ranks of the 8 major Hollywood film studios. It squeezed out the declining giant United Artists. Not only did this good news come to the Mawey Group, but Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne, which he had Blizzard develop, also began to sell online. The sales performance on the first day was as high as 200,000 copies. The hot sales volume remained at 150,000 copies in the following days. In just 1 week, Mawey successfully earned $55 million. At this rate of development, it is no problem for Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne to sell 8 million copies. That is a full $400 million. This sales performance is very worth celebrating for Blizzard. But for Mawey, who is rich, it is just good news that makes him smile. After all, as one's status continues to rise, one's horizons will continue to rise. In the past, I could get excited for a long time about good news, but now I can deal with it calmly. This is a kind of growth. While the game Warcraft 3 was selling well, Mawey also received a tormenting text message on his mobile phone. "Hey, Mawey, what are you doing? The 2012 Summer Olympics will start to be applied for soon. I wonder if our Sochi can be included in the candidate list this time." This annoying text message was sent by 20th's daughter, the twin sisters Amphelia and Bilavina. Since they parted at the last dinner, their identities were exposed by Mawey. They have been chatting on the phone from time to time. Sometimes it is the elder sister Amphelia who sends Mawey text messages. Sometimes it is the younger sister Bilavina who chats with Mawey. Anyway, From the text messages, Maweli can feel that the two have slightly different personalities. Whenever they talk about national affairs or international dynamics, it is mostly the elder sister Amphilia. And the younger sister Bilavina likes to make jokes and ask Maweli about some personal matters. For example, what it feels like to be in love, or whether a certain celebrity is pretty. It shouldn't be a problem to get into the candidate list for the Olympic city, but it may be difficult to make it out of the crowd. According to Maweli's memory from his past life, the host of the 2012 Summer Olympics is the British capital London. Chapter 263. Speaking of the Olympics, it is very costly. Although it is a large-scale sporting event that the whole world is paying attention to, the construction of the venues and the Olympic Village alone requires billions of dollars to support. Generally speaking, at least 10,000 athletes, 5,000 officials, 10,000 journalists and millions of tourists visit the city for an Olympic Games. And these people have to leave the country within 20 days, which places high demands on airports and train stations. Therefore, if the application for the Olympic City is successful, it is also necessary to improve the transportation problems, public infrastructure, and ecological improvement in this area. The hidden costs are very high. For example, the Athens Olympics in the previous life cost a full $15 billion. The most expensive was the Sochi Winter Olympics in Russia, which was seriously overspent by $51 billion. These constructions rely on venues and tourism to drive the economy, and it will take at least 15 to 20 years to earn back the cost. Even wealthy countries feel a little distressed about this money. No wonder many countries don't apply for the Olympics anymore, because it's really meaningless. In the past, when the internet was not well developed, many countries could not show their strength and could only use the biggest event, the Olympic Games, to show it to the world. But after the internet became popular, everyone knew what your country's strength and situation were. There is no need to swell up your face and hold the Olympic Games to show yourself. There was once a country that forced to hold the Olympic Games and had assets and liabilities for 30 years. 2 minutes later, Sister Amphilia replied to the text message and said, "Yes, it should be very difficult. But as long as you persevere, I believe that the 2014 Winter Olympics may be successful. I hope so." It is now 2001, and almost all countries in the world are proud to bid for the Olympic Games. Even if they know that they will lose money, they are willing to do it. Maweli actually doesn't care about the Olympic Games losing money, $51 billion. Anyway, he will spend the money when the time comes. In 2014, his net worth is estimated to have reached trillions of dollars. 51 billion was spent just for fun. And by the way, I could also achieve an Olympic achievement. After sending text messages to Amphilia, Maweli prepared to take a shower and go to bed. Tomorrow's life will be the same as today, with a sense of comfort and occasional surprises. Just as Maweli was preparing to take a shower, the butler Ivan hurriedly knocked on the door and said, "Master, Pakistan called and said they have something important to discuss with you." Pakistan? Maweli felt a little strange. He didn't know what they wanted to talk to him about so late. "Hello." He picked up the phone casually, but a hint of anxiety came from the other end. "Hello, Mr. Maweli. Sorry to bother you so late. I'm from the Ministry of Defense of Pakistan. We would like to consult. Can your country's MiG fighters and Soviet fighters be sold to us? If possible, can you arrange a meeting with our Minister of Defense General Shahid next week to talk face to face? The sale of fighters should not be a big problem, but they are so anxious. Have you encountered something?" Maweli asked on the phone. In the previous life, Pakistan was also an important customer of Russia. "Well, we had some conflicts with India. Car bomb attacks occurred in their territory, but they insisted on pointing the finger at Pakistan. They also sent a large number of troops to the border and kept harassing us with their race fighters." The Pakistani Ministry of Defense had to find Maweli because of the military friction between India and Pakistan. They wanted him to help introduce the Russian Air Force to buy their MiG fighters to resist India's ace fighters. Speaking of India's ace aircraft, it has a very temper. It falls to the ground at any time, which makes people all over the world dumbfounded. On average, at least 3 out of 10 aircraft will eventually fall to the ground. This is not because of being hit by enemy aircraft or suffering from bad weather, but because of poor quality and some design defects, which cause problems at any time. There was once an Indian ace pilot who crashed 3 fighters by himself and was unscathed. In India, it is easier to get a pilot's license than a driver's license in some countries. This is also one of the main reasons why he is addicted to crashing planes. Oh, I see, Maweli said lightly on the phone after hearing this. The conflict between India and Pakistan has a long history. For half a century, the relationship between the two countries has been tense and sometimes relaxed, and the armed conflict between the two sides in the Kashmir region has almost never stopped. So when India just suffered a car bomb terrorist attack, it immediately pointed the finger at Pakistan. No matter who the culprit is, it will fight Pakistan anyway, for the border conflict between the two countries, and thus purchase arms. This kind of business does not violate Maweli's principles. Anyway, as long as the arms he handles and sells are not used to engage in terrorist activities or launch aggressive wars, there is no big problem. After all, military frictions happen everywhere in the world. It is a normal phenomenon. Didn't Russia have a maritime conflict with Turkey and Japan some time ago? It's just that those 2 times were arm wrestling, and they didn't fight. Unlike Pakistan and India, the friction is a bit severe. Mr. Maweli, thank you for your support. On behalf of the Pakistani government, I would like to thank you. The male senior official of the Pakistani Ministry of Defense said happily on the phone. They originally thought that India was a customer of Russia and bought hundreds of millions of US dollars of frigates last year. So Russia may not sell arms to them. But they didn't expect that Maweli would agree so easily. It really put their minds at ease. After talking to the senior officials of the Pakistani Ministry of Defense, Maweli threw the phone away and then went to the bathroom to take a hot bath with the help of the maid. No matter who surrenders or who refuses to surrender in the India-Pakistan conflict, Russia will definitely be the biggest beneficiary. If Pakistan sells MiG fighters here, India's trump card aircraft will fall even harder. The Indian military will definitely come to Russia again to buy destroyers and even nuclear submarines to deter Pakistan. Why do we say that we will definitely come to Russia again instead of the United States, France, and Britain? That's because India, which has a high self-esteem, often causes disputes with other countries in the international arena. When conducting normal diplomatic trade with the United States, it used unfair competition to cause major economic losses to American companies. After learning the news, the US president decided to immediately revoke the preferential policy for India's trade activities and may retaliate against it economically. So India can only find Russia as its big brother. There is no other choice. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264. A week later, a Boeing 737 business jet arrived at the Russian International Airport on time. The Pakistani flag was printed on the tail of the business jet, and people could tell who was coming at a glance. That was Pakistan's Defense Minister, General Shahid. This was his first visit to Russia, and it was also a very urgent one. Because at this time, the tanks and armored vehicles of the Indian Army have been heavily pressed on the border. They are stationed on the India-Pakistan border and can fight with Pakistani border guards at any time, including India's ace aircraft. They also harass the airspace around Pakistan from time to time. They just can't control their anger and drop a few bombs to destroy the villages on the Pakistani border. As soon as a plane's gangway landed, General Shahid, wearing a Pakistani general's uniform, came down under the escort of the soldiers. General Shahid, 56 years old this year, has thick eyebrows and big eyes, a dark complexion, a thick beard, and looks very strong. Hello, General Shahid. Maweli, who had been waiting at the airport for a long time, naturally had to do his best to be a host and be responsible for the reception. Since he acquired the Sukhoi Design Bureau, the development of fighter jets in the entire Russia has become a solid block. Mikoyan and Sukhoi, the two major design bureaus, have joined forces and complemented each other, and their R&D and production capabilities have increased significantly. Hello, are you Mr. Mavey? General Shahid looked at Mavey with some surprise. He didn't expect that the Russian in front of him was so young, looking only in his early 20s. To put it bluntly, he was younger than his daughter. But he became a hot military and political figure in Russia. It really makes people feel incredible. Yes, it's me, General Shahid. What is the situation between your country and India now? Mavey knew the other party's purpose this time, so he simply got straight to the point and said small talk later. After listening to Mavey's words, General Shahid sighed slightly. Well, the current situation is that the Indian army has sent about 180 Victory main battle tanks, plus 100 of their newly developed Arjun main battle tanks, to confront our army at the border. According to my understanding of the Indians, I'm afraid that they will launch the first round of attacks soon. India in the parallel world has not yet purchased 3,500 tanks from Russia. That's because they independently developed the Arjun main battle tank, which is in large scale production, and is very confident. Originally, the Arjun main battle tank was supposed to start service in 2004, but the parallel world advanced it by 3 years. However, the performance, quality, and most importantly, the cost of this tank cannot be compared with Russian tanks. On average, an Indian Arjun tank costs millions of dollars, but its combat effectiveness is not as good as the Russian T-90 main battle tank, which costs 1/8 of the price. At most, it is similar to the T-72. It is really difficult for these Indian scientists and military factories. However, although India's military industry is difficult to reach Russia, but to bully Pakistan, from the military strength of both sides, they should have the advantage. In the past, India had a large group of Su-30 fighters, well-equipped mountain divisions, and thousands of T-72, T-55, and T-90 tanks. There are aircraft carrier battle groups, destroyers, light frigates, and several ballistic missile submarines in the sea. In contrast, Pakistan has too little to offer. The Navy has only 5 attack submarines, plus some scattered missile boats and destroyers. The army has almost no advantage in front of India's powerful artillery. The number of third-generation fighters in the air force is only half of that of India. No matter from which aspect, India's military strength is far superior to Pakistan, there is no doubt about this. But, the Pakistani army is not afraid of the Indian army at all. The main reason is the tactical guidance of the powerful ally, the perfect military system, and the development of nuclear bombs. The Indian army has no way to start. Why would the allies help the weak Pakistan so much? Mavey knew the answer very well. That was the deep friendship they had forged from fighting India in the past. The relationship was strong, and could not be easily broken by interests. Minister Shahid, how many Russian fighter jets do you need this time? Mavey asked directly. He knew that what Pakistan needed most now was timely assistance. Otherwise, it would definitely be bullied to tears by India. Hearing Mavey's straightforward question about the demand for fighter jets, General Shahid also said to him directly, Mr. Mavey, our Pakistani government needs about 35 Su-30 fighter jets. It would be best if they were already made. I wonder how much you sell them for. The price of a Su-30 fighter jet is $33 million US, but there are not many in stock, only about 5. Mavey answered truthfully. What is needed in doing business is integrity. Only 5. Mr. Mavey, how long will the fastest delivery time be? General Shahid was most concerned about the delivery time. After all, distant water cannot quench a nearby fire. It would be best if the Pakistani government could pay today, get the goods tomorrow, and train and start work. Then, they could teach the Indians a lesson. The fastest delivery time for the remaining 30 fighters will take 2 years. Mavey said lightly. Nothing makes him feel more comfortable than business coming to him automatically. 2 years. This seems to be a bit too long, Mr. Mavey. I'm afraid our Pakistani army can't wait that long. Do you have a better solution? General Shahid felt that the 2-year delivery time was too long. He had approached the United States before, but the Americans refused to sell him F-16 fighters. Mavey also knew the main reason. That is, the Soviet Union in the parallel world did not invade Afghanistan, the United States did not oppose Russia everywhere, and the 911 terrorist attacks did not happen. Therefore, the Americans did not choose to sell F-16 fighters, even the high-level F-16 Block 52 series fighters, to Pakistan, without the original intention of balancing Russia. The Americans have no shortage of money to sell fighters. At this moment, the fighter jets of the allied countries are still under development. So Pakistan's defense minister Shahid could only find Maweli through his connections to see if he had any solution. There should be a solution, General Shahid. If you are willing, maybe you can come with me to confirm it on the spot. Maweli asked the Pakistani defense minister invitingly. In the previous life, Pakistan was not afraid of the Indian army. But in the 1980s of this life, there was no support from the Americans. As a result, when the two sides developed to 2001, Pakistan might really suffer a great loss from India. Chapter 265 Maweli's Fighter Supermarket. On-site confirmation. Mr. Maweli, are we going to your country's Air Force base to confirm the inventory? General Shahid did not understand what Maweli meant by follow him to the site. In Shahid's understanding, Maweli would probably lead them to the Russian Air Force's military base to check the existing fighter inventory. It can't be considered as such. Anyway, you should know when you get there, Maweli said to the Pakistani defense minister in a tactful way. He couldn't tell the other party directly. The Russian Air Force currently has only a few third-generation fighters on sale. Most of them are in service. Other countries only accept reservations if they want to buy them. If you want spot goods, he has a large quantity here. I'm afraid the Pakistani government can't eat it all in one bite. Hearing Maweli's mysterious answer, the Pakistani defense minister, General Shahid, was even more confused. But as the saying goes, the guest follows the host's wishes, and Shahid did not show strong doubts. After all, the people present were all well-known figures from the two countries, and they knew how to do things, and would not mess around. About an hour later, General Shahid took Mavey's motorcade to a place that looked like a military base, but it didn't seem to be a military fortress guarded by the Russian military, because the guards patrolling the road and checking the road crossings all looked like mercenaries. The clothes they wore were not those of the Russian Air Force or Army. Mr. Mavey, this doesn't seem to be a military base of your country's army, right? General Shahid asked Mavey hesitantly as soon as he got out of the car. Minister Shahid, this is the 5th base of my Mavey mercenary group. The spot fighter jets you Pakistan want are in the base's warehouse. Mavey said to Minister Shahid openly. This 5th base is one of his arms storage locations. In the past year or so, the cheap fighter jets that Mavey bought from Ukraine have been parked in the underground air raid shelter of the 5th base. Usually, there are special people responsible for guarding it. Some time ago, a military spy from France was captured by mercenaries near the base. He was handed over to the Russian Federation. It can be seen that many people want to know the secrets of Mavey mercenary group, 5th base. Due to the asymmetry of information, General Shahid was not aware of Maweli's inventory of fighter planes. So he did not react for a while, wondering what Maweli was going to do by bringing him from the airport to this mercenary base. It was not necessarily to watch the mercenary training. However, just as General Shahid asked this question, Maweli led him directly to the underground and then ordered someone to open the number 3 door of the base's air raid shelter. In this huge space, there are nearly 60 Soviet fighter planes and MiG fighter planes parked. General Shahid standing in front of the door, as well as senior officials of the Pakistani Ministry of Defense, were so dazzled that they even forgot to blink. Su-27 fighters, Su-30 fighters, Su-35 fighters, MiG-25 fighters, MiG-29 fighters. These classic super fighters of the former Soviet Union, as if they had come out of nowhere, were displayed in front of everyone. The shocking scale of their huge number is almost catching up with the number of fighter planes currently available in their Pakistani Air Force. If all of them were brought back, the strength of the Air Force would definitely increase overnight. Of course, some special training is needed. In the parallel world in 2001, the scale of Pakistan's fighter jets was not very large. Mr. Maweli, those are Tu-95, Tu-160 supersonic strategic bombers. Do you have them at your base? General Shahid looked at the White Swan aircraft not far away. He felt that his entire worldview had collapsed a little. You know, the Tu-95 and Tu-160 long-range strategic bombers are Russia's absolute secrets. No country or individual can buy them, no matter how much money they pay. But now, they appear in the air defense warehouse of the Mawali Mercenary Corps. How could this not surprise the Pakistani defense minister and a group of senior officials? General Shahid, these two series long-range strategic bombers. Mawali was halfway through his words and couldn't continue. Because the Tu-95 and Tu-160 in front of him had no engines. It can only be regarded as his personal collection, which was stored in this underground warehouse. However, Mawali's hesitation did not distract General Shahid. On the contrary, the other party thought that Mawali could not answer this question directly, so he quickly apologized. I'm sorry, Mr. Mawali, I was a little excited just now. By the way, Mr. Mawali, how much do these Soviet fighters and MiG fighters in your base cost? General Shahid asked Mawali excitedly. The scene when the warehouse door was opened made him feel like he had come to a military treasure house. To put it bluntly, the senior officials of the Ministry of Defense rarely saw so many advanced fighters parked in front of them at one time. The average price of a third-generation fighter is about $33 million US. As for the fourth-generation fighter, it will be more expensive, with a price of $46 million US per unit. Mawali showed his businessman's nature and said to everyone, General Shahid, these Su-27 fighters in front of you use wing-body fusion technology, cantilevered mid-wing, and smooth curved winglets extending forward outside the wing root. The double vertical tail is in a normal layout, and the wedge-shaped air inlet is located in the front and lower part of the wing-body fusion, which has good aerodynamic performance. The maximum level flight speed is about 2,500 km per hour, and the combat radius is 1,700 km at high altitude and 500 km at low altitude. The machine gun is a GSH-30-1 30mm machine gun. It carries R-60 and R-27 air-to-air missiles. Mawali introduced to everyone like a treasure. He couldn't take this business alone. According to the concept of interest bundling, after the order is confirmed, he will share it with the Russian Air Force according to a certain ratio. The Pakistani defense minister and senior officials listened to Mawali's introduction quietly. Before they came, they knew that Mawali was very capable, but they never thought that his ability was so great. One person has almost the number of fighter planes in the entire Pakistan Air Force. The key is that they are all third generation and fourth generation fighters. If they are equipped with pilots of the same quality, then Mawali's mercenary group can easily beat their Pakistan Air Force. But Mawali is a businessman. He will not have the military strength to make the country panic. That is tantamount to digging his own grave. General Shahid, the fighters over there are Army G-25 fighters. Its weapon system is two infrared and radar guided air-to-air missiles R-40T and R-40R, two R-40T and R-60 short-range air-to-air missiles. Mawali continued to introduce to everyone step by step. Chapter 266. The first batch of fighter planes were delivered, but one crashed. Because of his invisible strength, the Pakistani defense minister and other senior officials were more respectful than when they met at the airport. How is it, General Shahid? Are you satisfied with these third generation and fourth generation fighters? Seeing that the guest had been listening silently without speaking, Mawali turned to ask Minister Shahid. Satisfied, Mr. Mawali, this is really great. General Shahid was naturally very satisfied. The Americans did not sell them F-16, and the French did not sell them Mirage 2000. In a critical moment, Mawali had so many fighters in stock. Even if the Americans and the French changed their decisions temporarily and suddenly resold their series of fighters, the delivery period of several years was something Pakistan could not wait for. Then Minister Shahid, please choose as you like. Mawali said to Shahid with a smile. It is unprecedented that he can do the fighter business like him. When a national level customer comes to buy a fighter jet from him, it is like shopping in a fighter jet supermarket, and the selection is dazzling. After a series of repeated selections and entanglements, the Pakistani Ministry of Defense finally selected 25 Soviet-made MiG third-generation fighter jets from Mavey. The total cost was $990 million. As for the remaining 10, as well as training personnel services, repair parts, and related information, they will be purchased from the Russian Air Force. Mavey will also donate 10 new Su-37 fighter jets to the Russian Air Force to replace their old aircraft. Anyway, he has the Sukho Design Bureau, and the cost is less than $10 million. This is also a happy ending. After all, Pakistan wants spot goods. After a week, the time is coming soon. The first batch of third-generation fighter jets from Mavey and the Russian Air Force will be delivered. For the delivery of fighter jets, the aircraft is not loaded into a transport plane and airlifted to Pakistan. Instead, it is led by multiple transport planes, and pilots fly fighter jets in certain batches and fly directly to the purchasing country following the transport planes. The reason for doing this is that the communication and navigation systems of the transport aircraft are relatively complete. In case of any problems, they can contact the ground in time. Moreover, the transport aircraft is large in size and is not easy to be misjudged in the air. Therefore, the first batch of 11 Su-30 fighters, under the guidance of 2 Russian Il-76 transport aircraft, took off from the Russian Air Force base at 9 AM on Wednesday. Then they passed through Kazakhstan and Tajikistan and finally arrived in Pakistan. Prior to this, the Russian embassy specially contacted the governments of Kazakhstan and Tajikistan and applied to them for the privilege of entering their airspace, so as not to cause unnecessary trouble. Because fighter jets are so aggressive that all countries are very sensitive, but it is very fragile. In case of air friction and being hit by anti-aircraft missiles, the aircraft will be destroyed and people will die. There is no room for negotiation. Therefore, to be on the safe side, the Pakistani government also specially dispatched Air Force forces to escort the Russian fighter jets in the areas where they passed, so that the Russian army can arrive in Pakistan smoothly. However, as the saying goes, the disaster happened too quickly. When the first batch of Su-30 fighters just flew to the intersection of Pakistani and Afghan airspace, suddenly, late that night, Mavey, who was sleeping soundly in a Moscow mansion, was suddenly awakened by an urgent knock on the door. "Master, something happened, Master." The one knocking on the door was naturally the butler Ivan. "What happened?" Mavey asked through the door, feeling something was wrong. If it wasn't something that couldn't be handled, the butler would definitely not rashly come to knock on the door to disturb him when he was in deep sleep. "It's like this, Master, that first batch of Su-30 fighters we delivered to Pakistan. Just now the transport plane sent back a message that they were attacked by an unknown force in the air. One fighter has lost contact." Butler Ivan was also scared by the news. He was still wearing pajamas at this time. It can be seen how urgent this intelligence is. "What? An air attack?" Mavey immediately got out of bed and opened the door. "This is fucking. Someone actually dared to shoot down a Russian fighter jet. This is simply too bold. They are tired of living." "Yes, young master, the latest news from the Air Force headquarters. The missing pilot is currently missing, and his whereabouts are unknown. It is said that the wing of the plane was hit by a missile, and he was forced to jump out of the parachute. The military has sent a large number of search personnel to the scene of the incident for rescue and investigation. It is estimated that there will be a reply in the next 2 days." Listening to the housekeeper's narration, Mavey really felt very depressed. Especially the Middle East. How come it finally quieted down for a while, and then TNN jumped out to cause trouble again? "I guess I can't sleep well this time. Arrange someone to prepare and send me to the Air Force headquarters." His business was ruined by unknown forces in the Middle East. Mavey couldn't continue to sleep as if nothing had happened. After all, there is still a Russian pilot whose whereabouts are unknown. It is not Mavey's style not to rescue the person successfully. 2 hours later, when Mavey arrived at the Russian Air Force headquarters at 4 AM, a group of senior Russian Air Force generals have already started investigating the airstrike and rescuing the victims in the operations room. After shaking hands with the officials, Mavey asked everyone, "What happened?" Your Excellency, Lieutenant General, can you explain it? Hearing Mawey's question, the Russian Air Force Lieutenant General in charge of the operation answered him frankly, Mr. Mawey, you came at the right time. This is what happened. The first batch of Su-30 fighter jets we delivered to Pakistan were suddenly attacked by two anti-aircraft missiles launched by unknown armed forces when they passed through the intersection of Pakistani and Afghan airspace. One of them was intercepted without any danger. The other one hit the right wing of the Su-30 fighter during the interception process. The pilot was forced to parachute out of the plane. The pilot's whereabouts are currently unknown. As for the unknown armed forces, we seriously suspect that it was done by terrorists in Afghanistan. Their shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles can hit flying objects at an altitude of about 5,000 meters. After preliminary investigation, we speculate that the two anti-aircraft missiles that attacked the aircraft group were most likely launched by militants at our troops in the highlands along the Afghan border. According to their actions, they should soon publicize the incident and claim responsibility for it. The Russian Air Force Lieutenant General said to Mawey truthfully. Chapter 267 Al-Qaeda claims responsibility. Listening to the Russian Lieutenant General's narration, Mawey also understood the general situation. Afghanistan is the cradle of terrorists. Although the Soviet Union did not launch an aggressive war against it in this life, due to the poor management of those in power, terrorists have grown everywhere. The most famous of them is the Taliban Armed Forces. It launched a campaign codenamed March on Kabul between May and June 1995, and quickly controlled nearly 40% of Afghanistan. The Taliban took advantage of the victory to launch a full-scale attack on Kabul. On September 26 of the same year, it occupied the national radio station, television station and presidential palace. It controlled more than 90% of Afghanistan's territory. It also became the interim government of Afghanistan, with nearly 100,000 armed forces, hundreds of tanks, and dozens of jet fighters. The combat effectiveness is not to be underestimated. If the people of the Taliban interim government shot down the Russian Su-30 fighter, they would be in trouble. Russia is a country with an absolute zero-tolerance attitude towards terrorists and terrorist activities. When faced with kidnapping in the country, the Alpha Special Forces did not hesitate to kill the hostages in order to eliminate the terrorists. This operation is more ruthless than that of the Americans. Kill the hostages directly, so that the terrorists can no longer be arrogant, and then annihilate them all. Speaking of which, the reason why the United States attacked Afghanistan was because the 9/11 incident had a really bad impact. The Taliban government refused to hand over the instigator of the incident, bin Laden. Otherwise, the Americans would not have launched a war on terrorism against the Taliban government. At 10:50 a.m. that day, bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, released a recorded video to the public, claiming that the Russian Su-30 fighter jet was shot down this time, and they were responsible for their Al-Qaeda. In other words, it was them who did it. Once the news was reported, it immediately caused an uproar around the world. Media in almost all countries rushed to report the incident, fearing that they would be one step behind others. The American ABC Broadcasting Company inserted this news in the midday news almost at noon that day. The latest news. In the early hours of this morning, a Russian Su-30 fighter jet was attacked by anti-aircraft missiles while passing through the intersection of Afghanistan and Pakistan's airspace. The fighter jet has crashed, and the pilot is missing. At 10 o'clock this morning, Al-Qaeda claimed responsibility for the incident. The news anchor said to the American people on TV. As the radio news rushed to report, netizens on the internet, including military fans in major military forums, paid special attention to this matter. After all, this is a very important and major event. If it goes wrong, it will trigger a large-scale anti-terrorism war. Fuck, Al-Qaeda is so awesome that it even dares to shoot down the Russians' planes. This is a rhythm of being tired of living, an anonymous netizen commented under the online news. Oh my god, I thought it was the Taliban, but I didn't expect it to be Al-Qaeda. Awesome. Waiting for Russia's anger to explode. Netizens who know Russia's attitude know from the news that the Russians will never give up. Let alone a Su-30 fighter. Even if the wing is scratched a little, it will not do. Al-Qaeda must be held accountable. Haha. Russia has come to this day. They deserved it for shooting down our 2 passenger planes. The people who left this comment are naturally Korean citizens. At the beginning, 2 civilian airliners of Korean Airlines entered the Soviet airspace due to navigation failure. Then the Soviets directly sent fighter jets to shoot down the passenger planes. And they refused to apologize and compensate afterwards, which made the Korean government so angry that they dared not speak out and could only deal with it hastily. Who told them to invade the Soviet airspace without authorization? And the most important thing is that they, South Korea, really can't beat the Soviet Union. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been talking nonsense. I would have started it long ago. Mr. Mawei, the latest news is that it was the Afghan Al-Qaeda that did the terrorist attack. We have now sent troops to Afghanistan to ask the Taliban government for the person. If they don't hand over bin Laden, then according to the president's intention, he will not hesitate to overthrow the Afghan interim government to dig out the culprit. The Russian Air Force Lieutenant General in charge of this matter found Mawei and said to him, although the Taliban government and Al-Qaeda are both terrorist armed forces in Afghanistan, there are still some differences. Al-Qaeda's target is the world, while the Taliban's target is only Afghanistan. The leaders of the 2 organizations are different, but they protect each other. Al-Qaeda's military strikes against Western powers are not just the first this year. Last year, in 2000, the Uskol, which was refueling in the port of Aden, Yemen, was attacked by a bomb from Al-Qaeda, and a 12-meter hole was directly blown open on the warship. On August 7, 1998, the US embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in Africa were bombed one after another. A total of more than 300 people died. The Americans did not take these 2 attacks seriously. At most, they sent the CIA to investigate secretly and secretly arrest suspicious suspects. It did not rise to the level of a large-scale anti-terrorism war. From this point, we can see the difference between Americans and Russians. In simple terms, Americans will send troops to destroy you only when they are provoked. As for the Russians, as long as they are provoked, they will definitely send troops. This tendency must be strangled in the cradle. Otherwise, it will be like the United States in the previous life. It may be involved in the 911 incident and become a shadow of the Chinese people in this life. Your Excellency, Lieutenant General, thank you very much for your support. I also express my highest respects to His Excellency the President on my behalf. Mawei thanked the Russian Air Force Lieutenant General. With this attitude of the Russian government, he will not suffer a loss. But if possible, he would like to go to Afghanistan and meet the supreme leader of the Taliban interim government. Unfortunately, according to the memory of the previous life, it is really dangerous to do so. Almost like a sheep walking into a tiger's mouth, walking into a trap. The current Al-Qaeda is worried about not doing something that will shock the world like the 9/11 in the previous life. Kidnapping, hijacking, Russia's popular dignitaries, the largest arms dealer. I'm afraid that Al-Qaeda is willing to do this. Mr. Mawei, please rest assured that we will be responsible for the follow-up of the matter. The Russian Lieutenant General said to Mawei with a solemn oath. Their Russian Air Force also participated in this transaction with Pakistan. Besides, the missing pilot is also a member of their Air Force, and it is impossible to leave it alone. Thank you, Your Excellency Lieutenant General. Mawei, who didn't sleep much all night, had such dark circles under his eyes for the first time since his rebirth. What he needs now is a good rest, and he believes that the Russian government can handle this matter. Chapter 268. A single move affects the entire body, and the entire Central Asia is in chaos. You're welcome, Mr. Mawei. The Russian Air Force Lieutenant General said, and arranged for Mawei to go to the reception hotel at their headquarters to wash up and catch up on sleep. Maybe when he wakes up, there will be good news from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. However, when Mawei woke up, there was no news from the Afghan interim government. But the Pakistani Ministry of Defense suddenly called. Hello, is this Mr. Mawei? I'm from the Pakistani Ministry of Defense. Our General Shahid is cooperating with your government to investigate the airstrike. So he can't get away, so let me call you. It's like this, Mr. Mawei. First of all, I'm really sorry that this happened when the fighter was delivered. In addition, our Pakistani government said that it will also actively cooperate with this operation and assist your country in arresting the leader of Al-Qaeda as soon as possible. The Pakistani Ministry of Defense called Mawey mainly to calm his emotions. Mawey also knew this. And not only that, after Mawey had just finished the phone call with the Pakistani side, representatives from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates also called him to express their condolences. They were concerned about the progress of the matter. The reason why the three countries were so worried was not only because they had a good relationship with Mawey and had arms trade. The deeper reason was that Al-Qaeda had a close relationship with the Taliban. The support funds for the Taliban interim government were originally provided by Pakistan, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. The relationship between them can be described as complicated. To put it bluntly, in the Middle East family, the younger brother Al-Qaeda has committed a crime. His elder brother, the Taliban, must be implicated. And the three brothers, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, etc., must see the current situation clearly and cannot act recklessly. What if the Russian military wants to eliminate Al-Qaeda and the Taliban gives Al-Qaeda too much shelter? The three countries of Pakistan cannot interfere casually. Otherwise, both sides will be offended. Mawey also knows the intentions of these three countries, but what he wants to know most now is what the Taliban says. Is it like in the previous life, refusing to hand over the leader of Al-Qaeda, bin Laden? 3 days later, the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs sent back a message. History is indeed surprisingly similar. The Taliban government in this life is determined not to hand over bin Laden. They even threatened that, if they want him, they can only go to the mountains to find him, unless the Russian army has the ability to invade Afghanistan. Anyway, 70% of Afghanistan is mountainous terrain, and Russia's T-72 heavy tanks and T-90 main battle tanks have no room to play. On the contrary, they will be blown to pieces by tank mines. Mr. Mawey, the interim government of Afghanistan is determined not to hand over the leader of Al-Qaeda, bin Laden, to our army. No matter how much pressure our Ministry of Foreign Affairs puts on them, their attitude is fearless. It seems that they have expected that we, Russia, dare not do anything to them. A Russian diplomat who had a friendship with Mawey, before called Mawey, revealed the latest diplomatic news to him in advance. Mawey, who was sitting alone at home, frowned as he listened to the phone call. The Afghan interim government is clearly playing with fire, daring to harbor terrorists and provoke the Russian army. What does the president say? What is his attitude? What Mawey is more concerned about now is the decision of the Russian president. If he has the idea of sending troops to attack Afghanistan and launch a war on terrorism, then Mawey will absolutely support the marching funds unconditionally. After all, the arrogance of terrorists must not be tolerated. Once they admit defeat, they will become more presumptuous. Maybe one day they will bring bombs to the Russian capital Moscow, or release sarin gas in the subway station to paralyze the central nervous system and kill people. It's like this, Mr. Mawey. The president is planning to hold an emergency meeting on this matter. He hopes you can also participate and discuss the next plan. The Russian diplomat invited Mawey. For such a national event, Mawey, who is not in politics, should not be of high enough level to participate. But because he had previously blocked the EU nuclear destruction plan in Ukraine, and provided the Ministry of Defense with methods to deal with Chechen armed forces and Chechen guerrilla warfare, so the Russian president also wanted to hear his opinion. Okay, I got it. I will definitely be there on time. Mawey has precious memories from his previous life. He knows very well that, if Russia wants to lead the army to eliminate Al-Qaeda and attack the Taliban government forces, the best way is to learn from the large-scale anti-terrorism campaigns that the Americans have carried out in Afghanistan and Iraq in the previous life. Learn from their bloody lessons. If Mawey remembers correctly, the United States fought the anti-terrorism war in Afghanistan for 18 years. A total of $323.2 billion was consumed, resulting in the deaths of 2,200 US soldiers. But in the end, the Taliban armed forces were still not eliminated. Because there are too many mountains in Afghanistan, the Taliban armed forces could not defeat the US army head-on, so they gave up their positions and fled into the mountains to fight guerrilla warfare. Anyway, they will slowly consume the Americans. as long as the US military can't consume it and plans to withdraw from Afghanistan, the remaining Taliban militants will be able to regain control of Afghanistan in no more than 6 months. Overthrow the government supported by the Americans. 3 days later, in the magnificent banquet hall of the Kremlin in Moscow, a group of Russia's most powerful people gathered. The Russian Minister of Security, the Minister of Defense, the Chief of the General Staff of the Ministry of Defense, the Federal Prosecutor General, the Minister of Internal Affairs, the Director of the Federal Security Service, the Director of the Federal Border Service, the Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Army, the Commander-in-Chief of the Air Force. In the banquet hall, almost all of them were at least generals. Only a young Russian man in a black suit sat at the end of the conference table very abruptly. And in front of him sat the most powerful person, the President of Russia. This was the first time that Mavey attended such an important meeting in a proper manner. To be honest, he didn't know what to do. He could only listen to other bigwigs speak and express their opinions. He stayed quietly aside. Mr. President, I think since the Afghan interim government is so tough and unwilling to hand over bin Laden, then we might as well send out the most elite anti-terrorist forces to teach them a lesson. The director of the Federal Security Service said indignantly at the meeting. He is a war advocate and hopes that the Russian army will send more soldiers to the Afghan battlefield to eliminate terrorist armed forces. Chapter 269. Fight or avoid war. Mavey's opinion. I also think that sending troops directly is a good idea, Mr. President. The Taliban government is now looking down on us, Russia. If we don't send troops to teach them a lesson, I'm afraid the whole world will laugh at our weakness. The Russian army commander-in-chief is also one of the war advocates. Mr. President, it is a taboo for military strategists to take care of 2 battlefields at the same time. I personally feel that it seems a little too early to send troops to Afghanistan now. After all, we have not completely eliminated the militants in Chechnya. It is easy to shake the morale of the army if we move to other places so quickly, the Minister of Internal Affairs said with a different opinion. At a national level meeting, it is safest to have multiple opinions like the Director of the Federal Security Service and the Minister of Internal Affairs. Otherwise, it is easy for the whole country to suddenly send troops to fight the war on terrorism in a fit of excitement. If something goes wrong at that time, it will not only waste people's money and labor, but also cause great damage to the economic development and military strength of the entire country. Mr. President, if we send troops into Afghanistan now, I'm afraid that our treasury funds will hardly support such a large-scale war. After all, it will not be finished in 2 or 3 months. Judging from the performance of our army in fighting Chechen terrorists, this battle may take a long time. The Federal Attorney General made relevant suggestions on the national economy. After listening to the speech, many generals present nodded silently. Fighting a war really requires a lot of manpower, material resources, and funds. It's not that Russians are afraid of war, but that they blindly launch a war on terrorism, and in the end they will only suffer. The Russian president, who was sitting at the front of the conference table, turned his eyes to Mavey at the other end of the table, after listening to the opinions of a circle of generals. It seems that he wants to hear what his opinion is. Mavey, what do you want to say? Do you support the main war, or avoid the war? The Russian president just opened his mouth and asked Mavey. Hearing the president's words, all the Russian generals and ministers in the banquet hall turned their heads and cast their eyes on Mavey at the end. Seeing so many bigwigs all looking at him, it would be unrealistic for Mavey to say that he didn't feel pressure. He took a deep breath, then thought seriously and said, Mr. President, I think if we want to launch a large-scale anti-terrorism war, the fundamental reason must not be just for anti-terrorism. The reason why we are under the banner of anti-terrorism is that there is a sufficient reason. So now we have a reason to send troops to Afghanistan. But the only thing missing is how much benefit can launching a war bring? Can these benefits exceed our military expenditures? Mavey spoke to the Russian president with emotion and reason. Due to the sudden incident and personal emotions, many bigwigs present were unable to look at this matter rationally. So some people supported the war, and some chose to avoid the war. But they temporarily overlooked one point, that is, what benefits would launching a war on terrorism bring to Russia. Mavey neither expressed his attitude of advocating war nor his attitude of avoiding war. He just put forward a novel point of view for the Russian military and political bigwigs present, as well as the Russian president. After listening, let them make their own choices. After all, such a big event, with Mavey's personal ability, could not be stopped. He had not thought about making money from such a war. So Mavey, what do you think we can get in the end by sending troops to attack the Afghan Al-Qaeda? After thinking for a while, the Russian president asked Mavey with his hands clasped together. It is indeed as Mavey said, it is easy to start a war, and it is not difficult to find a reason. The key is that in today's economic society, if the war on terror doesn't bring any benefits, who would be willing to do good things for no reason, consume their own military and financial resources, and do such a wasteful and costly thing? Based on his memories of his previous life, Mavey simply summarized it at the conference table and said, Mr. President, Afghanistan is a country with a very special strategic geographical location. It can be said to be the lifeline of the entire Central Asian region, and can affect the production and price trends of rich minerals such as oil, natural gas, and coal. It can also open up a channel from Southeast Asia to the Indian Ocean, sit in South Asia, India and Pakistan, and form a strategic encirclement of Iran and other countries. Of course, the premise is to win this war on terror. Mavey didn't want to make a fortune from the war on terror in Afghanistan, but in the face of threats and provocations from terrorist organizations, even the kindest people had to take up arms to fight back. They couldn't just tolerate and choose to keep things quiet. After all, this would threaten his family. Mavey didn't want to hear the news that his relatives and friends were killed by bombs or kidnapped by Al-Qaeda at home one day. Otherwise, it would really become a real-life version of the story of the farmer and the snake. After listening to Mavey's narration, the Russian president at the conference table had almost made a decision. Now they just have to wait and see if the missing pilot can be found safely. It has been 3.5 days since the pilot lost contact. The longer it drags on, the slimmer the hope of survival will be. However, the Russian president has ordered that the pilot must be found alive or dead. Such a hero who died for his country must not be allowed to die in a foreign land. He must be brought back to the country for the most solemn and lavish funeral. Since the Soviet Union in this life did not invade Afghanistan in the 1980s, Mavey estimated that the combat level of the entire Taliban armed forces would definitely not reach the fierce level of the previous life. At best, they might be 3 points weaker than the Chechen militants. The reason is that they have only fought with the Afghan government forces. That level of battle is similar to a firefight between a motley army. It is a competition of numbers, not tactics. It is a competition of fearlessness, not individual combat capabilities. Not to mention the equipment gap between Russia and Afghanistan. Drones, air-to-ground missiles, aerial bombs, self-propelled rocket launchers. Anyway, as long as they fight head-on, the Taliban armed forces are definitely no match for the Russian regular army. As for them fleeing into the mountains and fighting guerrilla warfare with the Russian army, that is indeed a very troublesome problem. 70% of Afghanistan is mountainous. Unless the Russian military can come up with a way to cut off the supply of materials to Al-Qaeda and Taliban terrorists, the guerrilla warfare after the regular battle may be quite tricky. After finishing the meeting in the Kremlin, Mavey got in his broken car and drove all the way back to his home in Moscow. Now he has said everything he should say. The only thing he can do is to wait for the final decision from above. With such a big thing happening, the beautiful Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Snorana naturally called and expressed her condolences to Mavey. Even the twin sisters and Filya and Bilavina sent text messages to express their condolences. Chapter 270. With such a big event, the beautiful Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Snorana had naturally called and expressed her condolences to Mavey. Even the twin sisters and Filya and Bilavina sent text messages to express their condolences. But at this time, Mavey had no intention of flirting with the beauties. Because in the next few days, it was crucial to discuss whether to fight or avoid the war. According to Mavey's estimation, the final decision of the Russian government would be heard in about 5 days. The time was faster than Mavey expected. At about noon on the 4th day, he received a notification call from the Ministry of Defense. "Hello, Mr. Mavey, this is Una. Minister Grilov asked me to tell you that regarding the launch of the anti-terrorism war in Afghanistan, His Excellency the President officially announced the implementation at the meeting today. It is expected that His Excellency the President will declare war on Afghanistan this evening. So Minister Grilov would like to invite you to the Combat Command Center to determine the relevant strategy with the Army and Air Force before the Army sets off. Yuna, the Secretary of the Minister of Defense, said on the phone. Due to the economic recession in Russia in the 1990s, internal disputes were frequent. The Russian army was in great need of tactical talents and practical elites. In short, it lacked practical people at the commander-in-chief level and the general staff level. So they hoped that Maweli could come to give some advice, so as to avoid a setback. Obviously, the Russian army's equipment was dozens of steps ahead of Afghanistan. But in the end, they were beaten by the militants. This kind of mistake must not be made. After all, this anti-terrorism war was initiated by the Russian president. The whole world will pay attention to it. If the performance of the Russian army on the battlefield surprises the whole world, it will not only be the military that will be embarrassed. Okay, I know, I will definitely attend on time. Maweli agreed on the phone. Fortunately, he had read relevant materials on the anti-terrorism war in Afghanistan in his previous life and could contribute. He knew the basic tactics and how to formulate them. What advanced weapons should be used on the battlefield. Well, see you then, Mr. Maweli, Yuna said on the phone. After talking to the Secretary of the Minister of Defense, Maweli also prepared to list some tactical details so that they could be provided at the tactical meeting. That afternoon, the Kremlin urgently notified the embassies of various countries in Russia. They were ordered to send representatives to the Kremlin to attend the meeting. In the magnificent banquet hall, representatives sent by embassies of various countries sat in the audience in neat clothes. At the same time, some Russian military and political figures attended the meeting as observers. There were reporters and media who were allowed to take pictures around, and they settled in the corner of the banquet hall. When everyone was present, the Russian president appeared in the banquet hall in a black suit. Then, under the photos and videos of reporters, he walked to the front of the stage with a serious expression. On August 19, 2001, 11 Su-30 fighter jets of the Russian Air Force flew out from the 1439th Air Force Base. When passing through the intersection area of Pakistani and Afghan airspace, they were attacked by two anti-aircraft missiles launched by Al-Qaeda. One of them was successfully intercepted, and the other unfortunately hit the wing of our Su-30 fighter. As a result, one of our Su-30 fighter jets crashed on the spot. On the night of the incident, our Russian military sent an emergency rescue team to search the scene. But there has been no news of the pilot of the fighter jet to this day. Al-Qaeda must take full responsibility for this. This is a terrorist attack against our Russian army. Our Russian military will definitely let the instigator know what the consequences will be if he angers the Russian army. After the Russian president finished speaking, he paused, then glanced at the audience and continued. Just a week ago, our Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs asked the Taliban interim government for the leader of Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden. But the other party not only refused to cooperate, but also planned to give the terrorist asylum. Al-Qaeda's terrorist activities around the world have never stopped since 1988. As their numbers and weapons continue to increase, the disasters they will bring to the world will inevitably intensify. So I think it's time to launch a war on terror. Any country or individual willing to participate in this anti-terrorist operation or provide assistance to the anti-terrorism cause, we in Russia welcome you to join. The Russian president said to the audience on the stage. His meaning is already very clear, that is, since the Taliban interim government is willing to harbor terrorists, then don't blame him, Russia, for sending troops to Afghanistan to arrest people. And not only that, Russia has also issued a call to invite countries around the world to participate in this anti-terrorist operation. Of course, the invitation is right, but who will actually participate at that time? Or who will express their willingness to send a few tanks and donate some funds? It all depends on the actual situation. However, the Russian government does not expect other countries to participate in this anti-terrorist operation. The reason for saying this is to express, it's okay if you don't help me fight terrorism. But when I send troops to attack Al-Qaeda, don't make things difficult for me. This is a counter-terrorism operation, not a war of aggression. All forces and countries that attempt to stop Russia's fight against terrorism will be subject to the most severe sanctions from the Russian army. As soon as this news came out, the whole world was shocked. Many people had never heard of the concept of the war on terror for the first time. They didn't expect that Russia would go all out to conduct military counter-terrorism in Afghanistan just because a fighter jet was shot down by Al-Qaeda. The 5 major American TV stations, CBS TV, ABC Radio, NBC TV, Fox TV, and Warner United TV, which received the latest news, inserted this news in the news as soon as possible. The latest news received is that the Russian president officially declared war on Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan at 6 p.m. today, and stated that Russia will never tolerate any terrorist activities that violate its national security. The female host of Fox TV said to the American audience in the news. At the same time, ABC Radio, which was the first to report the incident, naturally did not want to lag behind and rushed to report Russia's feat. Breaking news. Because the Taliban interim government allowed, condoned, and sheltered terrorists in the country to carry out a series of terrorist activities, the Russian government announced to the world this evening that it will send troops to Afghanistan to launch a war on terror. Not only American TV stations broadcast this major news. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271. The fierce Russians shocked the world. Even the EU countries that are at odds with Russia have reported on this incident, and many countries have praised Russia's just behavior. After all, Al-Qaeda is targeting the entire world. It has close ties with multiple terrorist organizations hiding in various regions, including southern Lebanon, Egypt, Libya, Yemen, Syria, the Philippines, Ethiopia, and militants in the Chechen Republic that wants to secede from Russia. The United States and many European countries have suffered a lot from them. For example, the bombing of the US Embassy in 1998 killed more than 200 people. In October 2000, Al-Qaeda launched a suicide bombing US warships in the Middle East, killing 17 American soldiers, etc. The overwhelming news broadcasts, plus multiple reports from newspapers and the internet, have attracted the attention of the world to this incident, and the melon-eating crowd who originally did not pay attention to this incident. Everyone was stunned by this feat of Russia. What? Am I seeing right? Because terrorists blew up a fighter jet of the Russian Air Force, so the whole of Russia is going to go all out to Afghanistan to destroy Al-Qaeda? Looking at this situation, it seems that even the Taliban government that shelters Al-Qaeda will be affected. The Russians are too tough. A domestic netizen who just paid attention to this incident left a message under the news. Haha. Is this going to be a war? Russia is worthy of being Russia. It's awesome. Last year, the US warship stationed in the Middle East was bombed, killing 17 American soldiers, and the Americans didn't do anything to Al-Qaeda. The year before last, the US Embassy exploded, killing more than 200 people, and what did the United States do? It just bombed the Al-Qaeda weapons depot to show its position. A senior netizen who is familiar with current affairs posted a comment in the forum. Not long after the post was uploaded, it attracted many netizens to post comments. So, the Russians are awesome. A fighter jet was blown up, and the pilot was not confirmed dead, but they just went straight to fighting. No wonder Turkey, a little Japan, dared to confront it militarily at most. They didn't even dare to fire a single shell. Because if they fired, the Russians would really fight back. And they might even dare to drop a nuclear bomb. Those who openly offend the powerful Russia will be punished, even if they are far away. I have to say that there are talents everywhere on the internet. Especially the messages and comments in the forums. Each one is very insightful. Mavey, sitting in the car, casually read the online news and netizens' comments. As the initial victim of the whole incident, Mavey will go to the combat center later to discuss a complete anti-terrorism combat plan with the Russian Navy, Army, and Air Force. This is the second large-scale battle that Russia has fought since the Chechen campaign. In terms of combat experience, there must be some improvement. But compared to this improvement, to be honest, Mavey is very worried about the Russian army's on-site command and on-site combat capabilities. After all, when the Second World War broke out, the Soviet army only had a set of awesome equipment, but lacked the generals to command the troops. This is a historical problem. Many brave and combative Soviet generals, Soviet admirals, and lieutenant generals were dismissed due to internal disputes, or this also caused the entire Soviet army to have a command elite fault phenomenon. This phenomenon has continued to affect the 1980s, 1990s, and even 2000, because there were no generals who could pass on their valuable combat experience. The newly appointed officers had to cross the river by feeling the stones, which was quite difficult. This is also one of the main reasons for the failure of the first Chechen campaign. When Mavey took a convoy to the position command center of the three Russian armed forces, the huge electronic screen was showing the entire Afghan area, including known military bases, transportation hubs, power facilities and other important infrastructure. All are marked with different icons. It is clear at a glance. The relevant personnel responsible for collecting intelligence are busy in front of the computer in a tense and orderly manner. At present, the first batch of anti-terrorist forces sent by Russia have been assembled at the airport and port ready to go. It is estimated that more than 80,000 soldiers will participate in this operation. Since Afghanistan is a landlocked country, the Russian Navy can only send an aircraft carrier battle group to station in the Arabian Sea behind Afghanistan to carry out surprise airstrikes or airborne operations to make the Taliban armed forces attacked from both sides. Mr. Mavey, you are here? Please come in. General Kiladov and his men are formulating tactics in the operations room. The senior officer in charge of reception took Mavey to the operations command room. This time, General Kiladov will be the commander-in-chief of the anti-terrorist operation, and the generals of the Russian Navy, Army, and Air Force will serve as staff officers. They will jointly sit in the command center. The scale is much larger than the last Chechen campaign. It can clearly show that the Russian military is serious, instead of just scaring Al-Qaeda like the Americans. As soon as Mavey entered the operations room, he heard the Russian generals discussing fiercely about formulating tactics. I think we can directly send the 106th, 109th, and 115th Airborne Special Forces regiments to attack the three Al-Qaeda training bases at night. Then we can send the 87th Infantry Regiment of the 1st Brigade of the 5th Mountain Division to raid the nearby Taliban garrison. We can eliminate all the militants in the Nuristan region at once and open up a channel for our follow-up troops. The Chief of Staff of the Russian Air Force said to the map of Afghanistan on the digital sand table, if a large-scale battle is to be carried out, the Russian army must have a foothold. Only in this way can we continuously send troops to support the Afghan battlefield, including battlefield supplies, fire support, and transportation of wounded. All need to be spread out linearly from a relatively safe base. I agree with General Deniskin's view. In addition to the Airborne Special Forces Regiment and the 87th Infantry Regiment of the Mountain Division, we should also send another special operations team to eliminate those Al-Qaeda members who attempt to escape or come to support on several main routes in the Nuristan region. A Russian army general also expressed his opinion. The Russian generals were discussing the tactics of small-scale battles in detail and intensely. The general tactics were mainly based on the relevant methods provided by Mavey during the Second Chechen War. In simple terms, it was to advance step by step and erode the Al-Qaeda militants area by area. In this way, the army would not be too involved in the territory and suffer from problems such as insufficient supply and support. Chapter 272 Mavey becomes the elite commander of the Russian army. Mavey listened carefully. It turned out that only a real war could sharpen a country's army. Everyone carefully planned how to capture and eliminate terrorists in each area of Afghanistan. Soon, the preliminary strategic plan was discussed. General Kiladov, I think that according to the tactics we formulated today, coupled with the huge gap in equipment, it is estimated that within 3 months, all militants in Afghanistan will be eliminated. By then, it should not be a problem to capture the leader of Al-Qaeda, Bin Laden, and the leader of the Taliban. the Russian army general said to General Kilidov with an optimistic attitude. He was not the only one who thought so. Almost the vast majority of the generals present believed that this anti-terrorism war should be easy to win. After all, whether in terms of weapon power or technological assistance, their Russian army has a sufficient advantage. It is equivalent to a regular army fighting a miscellaneous army, and one fight is a sure win. After listening to the opinions of the generals, the general person in charge of this operation, General Kilidov, turned his head slightly and then looked at Mavey in front of the digital sand table. General Kilidov had heard of this legendary Russian youth. However, they had never met before, so they had only met on important occasions, but had never communicated. Mr. Mavey, I want to hear your opinion on this Afghan campaign. Do you think the tactics we just discussed can be used against Al-Qaeda and Taliban forces in Afghanistan? General Kilidov asked Mavey seriously. The current Russian military and political personnel have been completely reshuffled. They have been replaced by officials who are sensible and know their limits. They will not act on their own in such an important occasion and make random decisions according to their own ideas. In the end, the war situation was lost. Hearing General Kilidov actively asking him, Mavey naturally spoke without reservation. General Kilidov, regarding your opinion on the Afghan campaign, I think we have paid too much attention to tactical play. You must know that these tactics are just what we have summarized from the Chechen campaign. They may not be applicable to the Afghan battlefield, which is 70% mountainous terrain. Mavey said lightly. All the Russian generals present looked at him with attention after hearing his statement. From the general's eyes, it can be felt that they were clearly asking, this tactic is the most effective method for the Russian army to deal with militants. If this is not applicable, then what tactics are suitable? Besides, this set of tactics was provided by you to the Ministry of National Defense. There are also many mountainous terrains in the Chechen region. At most, there are more mountains in Afghanistan. It's just a little more troublesome to fight. All the generals thought silently in their hearts. They are not the brainless villains in novels and movies. They will not jump out and step on the protagonist's face at every turn and then be counterattacked. After all, most of the Chechen tactics were created by Mavey. So even if they feel confused, they keep it in their hearts and will not speak it out easily. Mr. Mavey, according to you, how should we fight this anti-terrorism war? Afghanistan does have many more mountainous terrains than the Chechen Republic. But the overall combat strategy should be the same, right? General Kilidov asked Mavey patiently. Although he didn't know what kind of person Mavey was, from the deeds that someone had done, Kilidov judged that Mavey was not the kind of person who spoke without evidence. Seeing that the Russian generals in the room were all looking at him curiously and surprised, Mavey took a deep breath and said calmly to everyone, General Kilidov, in fact, we have always overlooked a crucial point. That is, in addition to the terrain, the biggest difference between the Chechen Republic and Afghanistan is that it was the Northern Alliance, not the Taliban, that originally controlled the Afghan regime. As the saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. In other words, we can actually send people to contact the Northern Alliance remaining in Afghanistan. Then we can attack the Taliban armed forces from both inside and outside and eliminate the leaders and members of Al-Qaeda. Mavey's resounding voice had just fallen. General Kilidov and the Russian generals standing in front of him suddenly showed a look of realization. Some even opened their eyes wide, obviously awakened by Mavey's words just now. Hiss. That's right. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Why didn't I think of the Northern Alliance in Afghanistan? A Russian Navy Major General secretly glanced at Mavey and thought to himself. Joining the Northern Alliance to attack from both inside and outside, this method is cruel enough. Moreover, the Northern Alliance has been dealing with the Taliban in Afghanistan for a long time. Therefore, the intelligence on the Taliban armed forces and Al-Qaeda is more accurate than ours. A Russian Air Force Lieutenant General said in public in amazement. The idea provided by Mavey can be said to be eye-opening. Before, everyone discussed and all focused on how to fight this battle and ignored the most important point. Now with Mavey's reminder, when the Northern Alliance is contacted, this battle will be much easier to fight. Seeing the affirmative eyes cast by the Russian military leaders, Mavey knew that his suggestion was recognized. So he continued to speak, saying to everyone, "General Kilidov, in addition to uniting with the Northern Alliance and attacking the Taliban armed forces from both inside and outside, I think we should also change the tactics of focusing on the Airborne Special Forces Regiment and cooperating with other troops to carpet bombing the Taliban positions and accurately guiding the residences of Taliban leaders. Afghanistan is different from the Chechen Republic. We have no geographical advantage there, and we cannot communicate smoothly with the local people. This will make the airborne regiment, like a headless fly, unable to launch a raid smoothly. If things go wrong, it may suffer heavy losses due to the enemy's ambush. On the contrary, directly carpet bombing the Taliban positions can not only reduce our casualties, but also eliminate the Taliban armed forces." Mawei explained to everyone with emotion and reason. It is indeed as he said before, the Russian army cannot completely copy the set used in Chechnya to Afghanistan. After all, there are many Russians in the Chechen Republic, and they can communicate in the local language. The tactics of the airborne regiment have certain advantages. When they arrived in Afghanistan, they airdropped a group of soldiers who were unfamiliar with the terrain and could not communicate in the language. They treated everyone they saw as a terrorist. In the end, they were sure to be blinded and killed by the enemy hiding in the crowd. The Soviet Union fought Afghanistan in the past, just as these staff officers suggested, which led to a disastrous defeat and the final withdrawal from Afghanistan in disgrace. Chapter 273 Mawei becomes a contractor in Afghanistan's anti-terrorism war. When they arrived at the battlefield in Afghanistan, a group of Russian soldiers were airdropped. They were unfamiliar with the terrain and could not communicate in the language. Everyone they saw looked like a terrorist. In the end, they were guaranteed to be blinded and killed by the enemy hiding in the crowd. It would be better to bomb wherever there was movement. In this way, the number of casualties of the Russian army would not be as high as in the previous life. At the beginning, the Russian army, which had invested millions of elite troops, attacked Afghanistan for 10 years, and finally 26,000 people were killed. The data reported by the Russian official included those who died of injuries in the later period, but did not include the missing. If the number of missing people is counted, it would be at least 30,000. Mr. Mawei, thank you very much for your valuable advice. General Kilidov, the commander-in-chief of the Afghan operation, sincerely thanked Mawei. Even after thanking him, General Kilidov invited Mawei to participate in the next military operation. Together with these generals, pay attention to the situation in Afghanistan and the command center. In case of any emergency, someone can give advice in time. Mr. Mawei, although you are not a Russian soldier, I would like to invite you to be one of our staff officers to assist the Russian soldiers in fighting this battle. Do you think you are willing? General Kilidov asked Mawei seriously. Compared with any rules and regulations, that is not the most important. The key is to fight this anti-terrorism campaign well and beautifully. Moreover, with Mawei's current identity, he just wants to avoid suspicion. Business and politics are interoperable and does not want an official position in the Russian government. Otherwise, he would definitely be able to reach such a height with his own strength if he gave up business and became an official. But everyone has their own ambitions, and Mawei still likes a comfortable and leisurely life. Dealing with tedious official duties is not his preference. I'm happy to serve, General Kilidov. It is my honor to make a contribution to the country. Oh, by the way, in order to allow the Russian soldiers participating in this anti-terrorism campaign to have no worries, my Mikoyan family has decided to take out $1 billion in succession to support this anti-terrorism operation. Mawei said to General Kilidov in a faint voice. Since we have to march and fight, it will definitely cost a lot of money. Considering the financial constraints of the Russian government, Mawei, a wealthy man, must contribute some. Moreover, this anti-terrorism war was originally caused by his fighter jet business. It would be unreasonable not to contribute a little more money. As soon as Mawei finished speaking, General Kilidov, as well as the generals of the Russian Navy, Army, and Air Force, who were standing in front of him, were suddenly surprised and opened their eyes wide. $1 billion? Mr. Mawei, really? General Kilidov was obviously amazed by Mawei's money spending method. You must know that in the 1980s, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan for a full 10 years and spent a total of less than 50 billion rubles. Calculated at the exchange rate at the time, it was almost equal to $2 billion US, and Mawei's $1 billion US, taking into account the inflation rate, is almost equal to 1/3 of the Soviet Union's 10-year war in Afghanistan. In other words, the money donated by Mawei alone is enough to support the Russian army to gallop on the battlefield in Afghanistan for more than 2 years. The economic pressure on the Russian government and the Russian military has been resolved. At least for 2 years, they don't need to worry about money. Yes, General Khalidov, the amount of $1 billion US will never be less than a penny, Mawei said in the war room with a calm expression. The cost effectiveness of the Russian army's war is really too high. If it were the United States, it would probably burn at least $8 billion US in just 1 year. Why is the cost gap between the US army and the Russian army so large? That's because when Americans fight, they only favor the most advanced high-tech equipment regardless of cost effectiveness. For example, in the Iraq War, the US Air Force launched an airstrike codenamed Decapitation Operation, launching a total of more than 800 Tomahawk cruise missiles. This missile is used to destroy strategic targets such as the Iraqi Army's headquarters, radar stations, and missile positions. Its cost is $1.6 million US. 800 Tomahawk cruise missiles are $1.2 billion US. What's more, there are other types of precision-guided missiles, with a number of nearly 20,000. The total cost exceeds $20 billion US. It is conceivable how much money the US military spends. The cost of missiles alone is sky high. If it were Russia, it would definitely use the most cost-effective one. If you can use self-propelled rocket launchers, you will never use Scud missiles. If you can use Scud missiles, you will never use cruise missiles. In addition to the extravagant spending on equipment, the personnel costs of American soldiers are even more expensive. Americans are all old soldiers. In the past, during World War II, they had to take hot baths and eat turkey on the battlefield. According to a research report, the average annual cost of an American soldier stationed in Afghanistan is $3.9 million US. This is data from 2015. Converted to 2001, the cost per person is about $500,000 US. 10,000 people stationed is $5 billion US a year. This does not include the cost of compensation for casualties. Compared with the personnel costs of the Russian army, Mawei's money is already worth it. Mr. Mawei, this is really thank you. The Russian generals standing around expressed their warm gratitude to Mawei for his generous donation. It must be said that Mawei is really too comprehensive. Not only did he provide the Russian army with such a good tactical idea, but he also took over the military expenses that gave the government a headache for 2 years. This is really awesome. You're welcome. This is what I should do, Mawei replied in a low-key manner. Compared with the investment of $1 billion US in military supplies, his layout in Afghanistan has just begun. Worldwide, the Middle East and the Caucasus region of Russia have the richest production of oil and natural gas. If Mawei invests money to support the army and then suppresses the militants in Afghanistan, then it is equivalent to curbing the neck of the oil competitor in the Middle East. In this way, it is definitely only a matter of time to monopolize the oil market and unify oil prices. By that time, Mawei's oil energy company will have absolute say. Who he wants to sell oil to, and who he doesn't want to sell it to, who he gives a high price to, and who he gives a low price to is all a matter of a word. The profit here is much greater than the $1 billion US in military expenses. During the few days in the Combat Command Center, Mawei learned the lessons of the US military's attack on Afghanistan, based on his memories of his previous life. Cooperating with Russian generals, the strategic details of this anti-terrorism war were carefully deployed and clarified. Chapter 274, The Storm is Coming. The first battle is a victory. Mawei's tactics are perfect. Since the Russian president announced sanctions against Al-Qaeda, advanced countries such as the United States, France, Britain, and Germany have all paid close attention to the situation between Russia and Afghanistan. Many so-called military experts have also been making comments on TV and the internet, commenting and speculating on what difficulties and resistance the Russian army will encounter if it wants to attack Afghanistan. I personally think that the anti-terrorism war advocated by Russia this time may not be as smooth as they expected. Afghanistan is a country with more than 2/3 of mountainous terrain, which is easy to defend, but difficult to attack. Russia's T-72 and T-90 main battle tanks can't drive up at all. Only goats can go up that kind of steep terrain. An Italian military expert commented on a talk show. Little did they know that their Italian army was so weak that they would have a hard time, even if they conquered Africa. In World War II, Germany sent an armored division to support Italy so that it could use its steel tanks to crush the African natives and the British troops stationed there. At that time, Britain was being attacked by Germany. Italy wanted to go to Egypt in North Africa to steal chickens and eliminate the British troops stationed there, but it was still defeated by others. Thanks to Russia's anti-terrorism war, not only Italian military scientists showed off on TV, even Brazilian experts and scholars couldn't help but comment on it. Russia sent troops to attack Afghanistan, which made an obvious mistake in military science. That is, fighting on multiple fronts. The militants of the Chechen Republic in Russia have not been completely eliminated yet. Guerrilla warfare of all sizes is taking place every day. However, Russia did not solve this problem properly, but actually sent troops to Afghanistan to fight against Al-Qaeda and Taliban armed forces. This is equivalent to opening up 3 fronts at the same time. There is no country in history that can do 3 things at the same time and deal with 3 enemies at the same time. If there is, it will not be Russia. At least the Americans don't dare to do this. Brazilian experts and scholars, in order to win ratings and attract everyone's attention, dare to say anything on TV. However, his remarks successfully fooled some aunts and grandmas who didn't know current affairs in front of the TV. Many people really believed it. Faced with such public opinions around the world, the Russian military must withstand the pressure and fight the first battle of the anti-terrorism campaign in Afghanistan with momentum. Fight with courage. At 1 AM on August 29, 2001, in Mazar-i-Sharif, Afghanistan, 17 Russian Su-34 fighter bombers used 60 missiles and 25 bombs. Carpet bombing was launched on the positions of the Taliban forces. The first battle of the Russian army in Afghanistan was launched. Mazar-i-Sharif is the largest city and transportation hub in northern Afghanistan. It is a heavily guarded area for the Taliban. If the Russian army can successfully take it there, it will have a very far-reaching significance for the entire war situation. The airstrike was completed quite smoothly. Because of the assistance of the Northern Alliance, the bombing location was very accurate. Almost overnight, half of the Taliban's forces in Mazar-i-Sharif were eliminated. Even the second leader of the Taliban, Shaharif, was killed by a bomb in this airstrike. This caused the Taliban armed forces to be in chaos. Many people witnessed the horror of a military power for the first time in their lives. The Taliban armed forces in Mazar-i-Sharif did not have too much time to survive. At 2 PM that day, the Northern Alliance forces lurking around the city took advantage of the chaos and captured the south and west of the city and controlled the city's main military bases and airports. The battle ended after 4 hours. By sunset, the remaining Taliban forces retreated to the south and east. The Taliban's power in northern Afghanistan gradually began to disintegrate. The first major battle was a victory, and the good news was immediately transmitted from the front line back to Russia. Mawey, who was resting in a hotel near the command center, received a call from the headquarters. "Hello, Mr. Mawey. I have good news for you. Our army has successfully captured Shaharif. It is expected that we will be able to quickly capture 5 provinces in the northern region and completely eliminate the Taliban's influence in the northern region." Mawey was naturally refreshed by such good news and sat up from the sofa. "How are the casualties? Have you counted them?" he asked on the phone with concern. In this life, Mawey did not know how strong Afghanistan was. "The number of casualties is like this, Mr. Mawey. The Taliban armed forces have killed about 2,600 people. The number of our army's casualties is less than 10. The Russian sergeant on the other end of the phone said with good news. In fact, there is one thing he did not say, that is, the number of casualties in the Northern Alliance army is slightly more severe, because they are at the forefront. Less than 10 people. Okay, I know. Maweli replied thoughtfully. This number of less than 10 people can be considered perfect for the Russian army. Since Afghanistan was not invaded by the Soviet Union in this life, it lacked the experience of 10 years of attrition war, and there is no weapon assistance from the Americans. So the Taliban armed forces of this term are not very good overall. It's okay to bully weak opponents, but once they encounter tough guys like the Russian army, the original set of tricks is useless. For example, the M4 tanks of the Taliban were eliminated by the Americans during World War II. When they encountered the Russian T-90 main battle tank, they were blown up by ballistic missiles falling from the sky before they even showed up. Including the Taliban armed forces guarding around the tanks, they were all blown up beyond recognition by the explosion and flying shrapnel, and died on the spot. How tragic the death was, how tragic it was. For example, the Taliban armed forces AK-47 submachine guns, grenades, RPG rocket launchers, and mortars. These weapons are used very smoothly in normal times. But after experiencing the terrorist airstrikes by Russia in the early morning, the weapons that were originally used very smoothly, all because of nervousness, can't play the level of training at all. The Russian army chased them from behind and beat them. Many of the Taliban fighters who died were shot in the back and bled to death. It can be seen that once faced with a real war, the human instinct to escape is immediately aroused. The news that the Russian army won the first battle was also transmitted back to the Kremlin. The Russian president sat in his office, listening to the good news from the command center in a good mood. Chapter 275. This Maweli is really interesting. According to this momentum, the large-scale encirclement and suppression operation is expected to be completed in half a year. Given the low death rate of the Russian army, it is estimated that the death toll in the frontal battle can be controlled below 200. It is just unknown what the casualties will be in the following guerrilla warfare and war of attrition. The latest news. Russia won the first battle against the Taliban and captured Mazar-i-Sharif, the largest city in northern Afghanistan. It is expected that in the next few weeks, the Russian army will be able to successively capture 5 provinces in northern Afghanistan. The Taliban will be completely driven into the mountains. The Washington Post published this news on the front page of the newspaper. Major news. Yesterday, our Russian anti-terrorist forces launched a surprise attack on Mazar-i-Sharif. More than 2,600 Taliban militants were eliminated, and the number of our Russian army killed was below double digits. It can be said that it was a crushing victory. The Russian Daily also published the victory news as soon as possible. As soon as this news came out, it instantly hit those experts and scholars who looked down on the Russian army on TV programs. The victory was a direct demonstration of the bravery of Russian soldiers. Netizens from various countries who had been discussing the issue in the forum were also inspired by Russia's anti-terrorist campaign. Fuck, the Taliban lost 2,600 people, while the Russian army lost less than 10 people. How did they achieve a death toll of 260 to 1? Isn't this a big win? A netizen who didn't know much about military affairs asked in a post on the forum. It was a big win. I wondered why the Taliban were so tough back then. Al-Qaeda even dared to blow up the Russians' planes. It's probably too late to regret now. A netizen who had been paying attention to this matter for a long time replied under the post. Look at the Russians' equipment. They don't fight street battles with you. They just use bombers and missiles with precision guidance. The Taliban are good at bullying the miscellaneous troops, but they have never fought against the regular army before. It's normal for so many people to die. At this time, a senior netizen came out to explain the doubts. Russia's anti-terrorist war has caused a sensation all over the world. After the victory in the first battle, the Russian army, together with the Northern Alliance forces, continued to advance towards the other 5 provinces in the north. They eliminated many Al-Qaeda and Taliban forces that attempted to resist. It can be said that they achieved great results. 2 weeks later, Maweli, who was at home in Russia, received a call from the command center, reporting the latest news to him. Mr. Maweli, our army has successfully captured 4 provinces in northern Afghanistan. We only need 1 province to complete the unification of the northern front. Expel all Taliban forces in the north. On the phone, the Russian sergeant who reported the news said to Mawey excitedly, well done. Due to Mawey's temporary command status, he had to imitate the leader's tone and encourage him. Excuse me, Mr. Mawey, what should we do next? Continue to advance to the south. The Russian sergeant asked Mawey. Mawey on the other end of the phone thought about it seriously and then said, don't rush to advance and focus on maintaining stability. After all, the Taliban armed forces are hiding in the mountains, and what they want most is to find an opportunity to fight back. By the way, do you know the whereabouts of Bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, and the leader of the Taliban armed forces? As the saying goes, to catch a thief, you must first catch the leader. Eliminating or capturing the leader of the organization will be a huge blow to the terrorists. Well, Mr. Mawey, our military seems to have no specific information about the two of them. Their whereabouts are very secretive, the Russian sergeant said helplessly on the phone. After listening, Mawey nodded slightly. The US military in the previous life spent several years and still couldn't find Bin Laden himself. So it is normal that the Russian army has not found him yet. Please tell General Kilidov that I will offer a reward of $50 million for the whereabouts of Bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, and the leader of the Taliban armed forces in the name of the Russian military. If anyone knows about the two and is willing to tell our army about them, the money will be his. Mawey said to the sergeant in a faint voice. As soon as he finished speaking, the Russian officer on the other end of the phone was obviously stunned and did not react. $50 million? Two people means $100 million? I have seen rich people, but I have never seen such a rich person. In order to deal with the terrorists who annoyed him, he actually offered a reward of $100 million to capture the leader. This rich man is really amazing. In fact, what the Russian officer did not know was that Mawey's reward might not be paid in the end. Because anyone who can sell out the news of Bin Laden and the leader of the Taliban are all the people around them who are trustworthy and help them do things. In other words, those who sell out the news must have dirty hands. When they are tempted by money, they will come to leak the secrets to the Russian army. Even if the Russian army captures Bin Laden, Mawey will not have to pay them the money. On the contrary, the Russian military will put all these informers in jail. For example, in the previous life, Bin Laden's personal doctor leaked the secrets to the Americans and told the US military where Bin Laden was hiding. He also pointed the way for the US military during the operation that day, but in the end, the doctor did not get a reward of $50 million. Instead, he was captured by the United States for crimes such as involvement with illegal military groups and terrorism, and sentenced to 33 years. It is estimated that he will spend the rest of his life in prison. It is really a loss of both the wife and the army. It is too late to regret. The news that Mawey offered a reward of $100 million to capture the leaders of the two major terrorist organizations was quickly passed back to the Russian army and the Kremlin. The Russian president, who learned of this, immediately understood Mawey's intentions. And he also expressed great appreciation for his cunning performance. This Mawey is really interesting. The Russian president smiled meaningfully in his office. Then he asked General Kilidov, who was in charge of the operation, to issue the huge reward in the name of the Russian military, in order to disrupt the morale of the Taliban armed forces and Al-Qaeda members. In order to protect Mawey's personal information, the Russian president will not include any words about Mawey in the reward content. This is to protect his personal safety. After all, the Al-Qaeda gang will use extreme methods such as human bombs to retaliate against the enemy. The Russian president does not want to lose Mawey, a powerful partner. If Mawey has any problems, the consequences will be very serious. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.